Part 94. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 965. Xiaolishan is here. When everyone looked at that figure, their expressions changed greatly. Su Tong turned around when he heard the sound, and before he could see the figure clearly, he could already feel the overwhelming sense of oppression. Wisps of scarlet blood spanned between the heaven and the earth, as if they were trying to hold up the heaven and the earth. Human blood energy, like beacon fire and wolf smoke, condenses and rises above the 9 heavens. It is impervious to all evil, and hundreds of demons dare not come close. The peak of the earth immortal is much stronger than my cultivation. No wonder he is called the one who can stand shoulder to shoulder with Su Lai. Extremely. Su Tongming looked around, and discovered that there was a vast ocean of luck above the opponent's head. A dragon nested in that ocean of luck, stealing the fate of the northern barbarians for his own use, nourishing his own destiny. Given time, the dragon ascended to heaven. At this time, I am afraid that this is the day when Xiaolishan breaks through the bottleneck of the earthly immortal and truly cultivates the immortal way. But Su Tong had read the script and knew that Xiaolishan was not that lucky. The god behind him would not allow him to break through the shackles. A layer of golden rings appeared in Su Tong's pupils, and he used his clairvoyance to pierce through the vast blood and see clearly the true appearance of the third best person in the world. He looks like he is in his 40s, wearing a cloak with many bird feathers on it. He has a peaceful face, a straight aquiline nose, thick eyebrows and big eyes, slightly curly long hair, and even looks a bit like Jiao Jun. So strong. Gu Zibai's expression on the side was solemn, and he could feel the terrible oppression on the other party's body. The appearance of Xiaolishan was like a shot in the arm for the northern barbarians. The defeated army instantly regained its morale, and under the command of the drums, quickly reorganized to defend and retreat, without giving Su Tong and the others a chance to continue the slaughter. Dezhou quickly returned to the chariot of vitality and took out a gold silk bag from his waist. When he opened the bag, there were crystal clear green gems inside. These gems were Dezhou's inventory and each one was used. Billions of trillions of vitality energy were gathered together, and he threw one into the vitality furnace, causing the vitality chariot to quickly pour out a large amount of vitality essence and inject it into his body, allowing him to return to his peak state in an instant. Dead, this guy is dead. When Yeliki saw his uncle, he was so excited that he wanted to dance. He walked to the Yuandi chariot and stared at Su Tong condescendingly. I'll give you one more chance, surrender or die. Hearing this, Su Tong raised his head and rolled his eyes at the sky, then shook his head. You must have developed teenage syndrome. The sound was not loud, but everyone present heard it clearly. Although I don't know what it means, if I think about it with my toes, I should understand that it's not a good word. Yeliki was so angry that he gritted his teeth. If there weren't thousands of northern barbarian warriors below, he would have wanted to shoot this bastard to death. At this time, Xiaolishan moved. Just taking a step forward, the horse that Su Tong and others were sitting on began to move back and forth uneasily. You and your men will just charge into the northern barbarian camp later. After you get out, continue running to the west. Su Tong whispered to Gao Zhou and others. Then Su Tong reined up his horse, raised his horse forward, raised his head and looked at Xiaolishan. Hey, everyone in the Xiao family is dead, why don't you even have anyone who can fight, and you want an old bone like you to come out? Hiss. As soon as these words came out, everyone felt their scalps go numb. They had seen arrogant people, but never such arrogant people. After all, Xiaolishan is also a senior who has been famous in the world for a long time. Even if he follows the rules of the world, he is so arrogant and arrogant. Xiaolishan frowned, raised the long sword in his hand and held it horizontally in front of him. His fingers gently slid along the sword's spine. My sword said that I have encountered an opponent with a sword. I want to see what kind of sword you are. What kind of sword can it be? make it so exciting. As Xiaolishan took another step forward, everyone felt that the sky was dark and the earth was dark. Except for the nightmare cavalry, which was still able to control its own mount, other people's horses had begun to kneel on the ground. Su Tong's face darkened, and just when he was about to take action, he suddenly heard a burst of laughter. Ha 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 ha, Xiaolishan, you have been famous for a long time, and you claim to be no weaker than Su Lai, but today you are attacking a junior yourself, so what is your ability? I saw a person walking out of the forest. This person was wearing a Taoist robe and a Taoist bun on his head. He jumped up sideways. The wide Taoist robe was like the wings of a pine and crane. He landed lightly between Su Tong and Xiaolishan. With a flick of his long sleeves, there was an unknown Taoist charm. Spread out and blocked the murderous aura emanating from Xiaolishan. It's Zhang Yishan. Zhang Yishan's appearance seemed to exceed everyone's expectations. After the battle at Human Mountain, this man disappeared without a trace. He only appeared hurriedly at Xinhua Pass and then disappeared again. People can only guess that he handed over the innate divine fetus to Yang Hong. But I didn't expect him to show up at this time. Could it be that he has been secretly protecting Yang Hong? Now many of the doubts in everyone's minds were suddenly solved. It's no wonder that Yang Hong knew the secret method of Longhu Mountain, Zixiao Divine Thunder, and it seemed that Zhang Yishan also taught it. Then the innate divine fetus must be in the hands of Yang Hong. For a moment, everyone stared at Su Tong with more and more intense eyes. When Xiaolishan saw this master of Longhu Mountain, a hint of impatience flashed in his eyes, and he raised his sword coldly. Get out of the way. Humph, what's the matter? Xiaolishan, you forgot how my nephew Zhang Xian came down from the mountain 16 years ago and beat you. Zhang Yishan narrowed his eyes and smiled as he mentioned what happened 16 years ago. As soon as he said this, not only Xiaolishan lost his face, but also the face of the good old man Gu Zhang, who stood aside and watched the battle changed. The people who were originally surrounding Gu Zhang glanced sideways and saw that Gu Zhang's expression was terrifyingly cold. They all involuntarily stepped back and did not dare to come forward again, for fear of becoming Monk Gu Zhang's punching bag. Zhang Xian, this person's name, has become a demon that cannot be looked at directly in front of the most powerful people in the world. Even with a mind like Gu Zhang's, when they hear this name, their years of hard training in Buddhism will break down. The shadow is too great for them to let go. After all, after a lifetime of hard work and climbing to the top, the distance to becoming an immortal and attaining the Tao is already within reach. As a result, a young man suddenly ran out, punched a child, pushed them to the ground and rubbed them. No one can bear this. It's like you spent a lot of money and finally became a big player on the list. Before you can be happy for a few days, an unknown player suddenly pops up, wearing the next version of the top-notch costume, and pins you to the ground. Damn it, if you change your mentality, you will explode. Zhang Yishan finished mocking Xiaolishan and looked back at Su Tong. My little friend, don't forget our agreement. Su Tong sighed and cupped his hands. Don't worry, I will definitely take good care of the innate divine fetus for you. After saying this, Su Tong ignored Xiaolishan's threat, summoned the little fat man of the second soul, turned around and pointed at the northern barbarian army in front. Brothers, fight out. Kill. With Zhang Yishan as their backing, everyone was freed from Xiaolishan's fear. They raised their swords and charged towards the northern barbarian army in front. The nightmare cavalry was still the vanguard, but the difference was that Su Tong had thousands of cavalry following closely behind him. Bang bang bang. The warhorse produced a huge impact and crashed directly into the barbarian army's square formation. It easily tore a hole in the barbarian army again, and then rushed towards the west without looking back. Boss, who is that old Taoist priest? Gao Zhou couldn't help but look back and saw a purple light tearing through the sky in the distance, followed by an overwhelming murderous aura that seemed to split the world into two. Even though they were far apart, he could still feel that a breath of despair. So he couldn't help but ask Su Tong. Why? Su Tong just sighed. 3 sentences from Zhang Yishan when he was at Chinwu Pass flashed in his mind. This thing is fake, but everyone in the world must think it is real. If necessary, even if I risk my life, I will give you the blame. Little friend, I'm sorry, Pandeo is just such a disciple. Pandeo doesn't have the ability to reach heaven. He has disgraced his ancestors, so he had no choice but to make this decision. My little friend, if one day you see my apprentice, please tell him that master left a jug of wine for him under the cherry tree as a congratulatory gift for his wedding. The movement behind him became louder and louder, but Su Tong led the team and ran westward regardless. The team ran wildly for a whole day and night, and Su Tong signaled everyone to stop and rest. Thousands of soldiers' faces were covered in blood and they couldn't tell whether it was their own or the enemy's, but their eyes looked particularly excited. I haven't encountered such a happy battle for a long time. Su Tong motioned to Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai to bring out dragon rice for cooking. He frowned and looked in the direction of Lu Yuepi in the distance. He didn't know what the battle between Zhang Yishan and Xiao Lishan was like. Result: General, we had a good battle and it was a pleasure. What should we do next? Wu Zhe came over excitedly and asked Su Tong. Just when Su Tong was about to speak and signal them to take a rest first, Li Bo's voice came from the team channel. Boss, I seem to have discovered the granary of Bumintun Liang. Su Tong was startled. After a few seconds, he couldn't help but curl his lips. Shit luck, he thought to himself that this team mascot was really not a fake. It turned out that Li Bo did not rush into the battlefield with Gao Zhou and others. Instead, he led Gao Zhou and others to complete the detour and then rushed back according to Su Tong's plan to inform Wu Ji. He kidnapped the uncle-in-law not only to use him as bait, but also with the intention of coercing the emperor to order the princes. With his move, Wu Ji would definitely take the initiative to attack, otherwise the northern barbarians would divide their forces to pursue them. Only when Bumin and Tiangan truly fight can he lead his men to achieve more military exploits. This is Su Tong's strategy for Wu Ji to break the situation. There is no strategy, only one word: fight hard. If they win, Tiangan will have peace for at least 10 years. If they lose, the worst result for Tiangan will be to retreat outside the Yangtze River and rule across the river from the northern barbarians. The result will not be worse no matter what. It's just that Wu Ji is old and no longer has that courage and ambition. Unexpectedly, Li Bo took the wrong route on his way back, and accidentally found the Tunliang walled city hidden not far to the east of the Bumin camp. Report it together, you have made a great contribution. After Su Tong praised Li Bo, he looked at Wu Ji and others, grinned, raised the corners of his red lips to reveal a row of neat teeth, and calmly said 3 words to the young generals in front of him: kill back. At this moment, Wu Ji suddenly sneezed, holding his forehead with both hands for a moment, looking much older again. Yang Hong rushed out with 2,000 people, but there is still no news. Uncle Guo, the little ancestor, was nowhere to be seen. Wu Ji felt regretful when he thought of this. He suddenly felt that he had made a wrong decision in letting Yang Hong go. Standing up and walking out of the commander's tent, Wu Ji walked on the camp with a heavy heart. Handsome. At this moment, 2 figures suddenly came running from a distance. Wu Ji saw that they were the 2 guards beside Su Fan, his uncle. I saw 2 people galloping towards me. They jumped off their horses and fell in front of Wu Ji with a look of embarrassment. Quick, hurry up and save the prince. That bastard named Yang tied up the prince and rushed in with him the siege of the northern barbarians. As soon as the 2 said these words, Wu Ji was so shocked that all the hairs on his body stood up. What did you say? Say it again. My eldest son was kidnapped by Yang Hong and used as bait. Marshal Wu is very anxious. That bastard named Yang should have been killed by 1,000 cuts. If we hadn't noticed that the situation was getting worse and worse when we followed them, and secretly tricked them, we found out that they deliberately sent us away in advance. Yang Hong would have let his people he kidnapped my heir apparent. When the two of them said this, they were so angry that they gnashed their teeth. When they found out about this, they hurried back to report the news. As a result, they were poisoned by the other party. Later, they were plotted and knocked unconscious with a punch. When they woke up, everyone was gone. Then he hurried back to report the news. The two people's complaints shocked Wu Ji's heart, and Wu Ji had not yet recovered from his emotions. Report. At this moment, a scout quickly came to report and handed a piece of information to Wu Ji. Wu Ji opened it and looked at it, his face was uncertain for a moment. The above was yesterday's intelligence. The intelligence said that Yelaki led 10,000 elites to pursue Yang Hong and others. It was suspected that there was an uncle in Yang Hong's team. Seeing the information inside, Wu Ji's eyes darkened and he almost fainted. He knew that Yang Hong was bold. If he wasn't bold, how could he have achieved such a prestigious reputation? But who would have thought that this guy would be so brave? Quick, go explore what's going on in Buman. Wu Ji was in such a turbulent mood at the moment that he couldn't even speak clearly. At this time, a war horse from outside ran into the military camp again, but the person who came was Li Bo. After Li Bo dismounted from his horse, he sent the latest battle report to Wu Ji. Commander Chi, we discovered the Buman grain camp in the east. Wu Ji couldn't care about this at this moment. He picked up the battle report and scanned it. When he saw the news confirming that Uncle Guo had not died in the battle, Wu Ji finally calmed down. The contents of the battle report were naturally informed by Su Tong to Li Bo through the team channel, and the real-time broadcast was absolutely accurate. Wu Ji looked at the content above, and his expression became strange for a moment. Commander Wu, send your troops quickly. The two Su family guards glared at Wu Ji and urged him to send troops to rescue as soon as possible. Wu Ji looked at the sky and it was almost dusk. After thinking for a moment, he said, "Here comes someone." Promise. Several cronies stepped forward. Go down the order, the camp will be guarded tonight. The generals of the three armies must defend the camp to the death for me. Promise. Then Wu Ji turned around and walked into the handsome tent, go to the top. After the words fell, several close followers stepped forward and put the armor on Wu Ji's body. After putting on the armor, Wu Ji continued to give orders and led 6,000 elite soldiers to leave the camp in person. When the two guards of the Su family saw this, they couldn't help but look at each other, and then asked, "Commander, are the 6,000 men and horses a little short? Commander, can you mobilize 2,000 more elite troops? I'll just wait and lead them." I'm afraid it wouldn't be appropriate for the commander to leave the camp. After the two of them finished speaking, Wu Ji smiled coldly, 6,000 is enough to burn food and steal the camp. Any more will be detrimental. Ah! Now it was the turn of the two of them to be stunned. They hurriedly stopped in front of Wu Ji and said, "Commander, aren't you going to save my heir apparent?" They didn't know that Wu Ji had taken the wrong medicine. His son was in danger. Instead of going to the rescue, Wu Ji wanted to take people to steal the camp himself? Isn't this nonsense? Wu Ji didn't want to explain to these two idiots, but for the sake of the Su family's face, he still said patiently. You two, Uncle Guo and the others are now in the west of the northern barbarians. If we bring people to support us, we will be surrounded and killed by the northern barbarians. At this time, only a surprise attack on the northern barbarians' grain and grass can prevent the northern barbarians from dividing their troops and pursue them. With the courage of Marquis Shinwu, as long as the northern barbarians don't divide their troops, so they will definitely be able to retreat unscathed. Seeing that the two were still hesitating, Wu Ji immediately became impatient. He pushed them away and walked out of the tent. Taking advantage of the nightfall and darkness, he quickly led 6,000 men and horses straight to the north. The fortress of Mantun Liang. As the guy who discovered the grain fortress, Li Bo was naturally incorporated into Wu Ji's team and was responsible for leading the way. There is no doubt that Su Tong's action this time forced Wu Ji to have to fight with Bei. It's quite frontal and tough, and this is also the key to rewriting the direction of this script. This chapter is not two chapters in one, it is a single chapter. I went out to stock up on food today, but who knew there would be a huge crowd of people, and it would be very stressful. Fortunately, I don't have to go out from tomorrow on. I owe you all an update, so I'll make it up tomorrow. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 966. Under the night, a huge bright moon seemed to hang on the edge of the setting moon. Perhaps this is how Luyuepi got its name. A lonely tomb stands on it, a huge stone is cut into a tombstone, and the iron pen and silver hook clearly read the position of Zhenji Iwei Li Changkong Zhenren Zhangyishan. Just the words carved on the stone tablet make people feel sharp and sharp. People with lower cultivation level would not dare to look directly at this tablet. This is the tombstone Xiaolishan personally made for Zhangyishan, which implies the earthly immortal sword energy and is extraordinary. What's even more ironic is that in front of this Taoist master's grave, two Buddhist saints were chanting sutras for his salvation. Others did not dare to step forward and could only stand 10 feet away. The four great masters of Longhu Mountain are now missing one. Everyone felt sorry for him. But more than anything, he was afraid of Xiaolishan, who was holding a bottle of wine at the grave. They are both Tao-killing earth immortals, and the battle between the two is really earth-shattering. Zhangyishan's thunder method and Taoist skills are so superb and unpredictable that they are the best in the world. The Wuji Bagua formation, Xiantian Wuji fist, and Zixiao divine thunder are all earth-shattering. Back in Hutu Mountain, he was not at a disadvantage when faced with the siege of his junior brothers Dao Zhenren, Feng Tianhua, and Dizhou. But when facing Xiaolishan, the gap was so huge that everyone was stunned. From the beginning to the end, Xiaolishan only used one sword, becoming a saint with one sword, cutting off the shackles of time and space. Everyone only heard the sound of Mengtajian, and the next moment blood blossomed on Zhangyishan's chest. This scene really shocked everyone. When they came to their senses, the Mengtai sword in Xiaolishan's hand had already been sheathed. It seems that after this battle, Feng Tianhua may not be worthy of his name as the best swordsman in the world. As for Dizhou and Yeliki, their expressions were even more complicated. The Yuankai divine sect attached itself to Yeliki's command precisely so that after Yeliki ascended the throne, he would have enough power to get rid of the influence of the Xiao family. This was the consensus reached between him and Yeliki. After all, Yeliki is a good nephew, but he also wants to be a good emperor. His uncle's strength and influence have completely penetrated the entire Xiao family into the entire northern barbarians. For example, Xiao Qi, the general of the southern expedition, Xiao Meng, the left prime minister of the court, and even his own mother, Queen Xiao. The Xiao family is too powerful. Even 100 years after Xiaolishan, the Xiao family is still too big to fail. The slightest movement will overthrow the entire northern barbarian kingdom. Yeliki didn't want to see such a world waiting for him after he ascended the throne in the future. She doesn't even want to be like her father, sitting on the dragon throne and not even daring to fart. She obviously likes her eldest brother the most, but because her mother is from the Xiao family and her uncle is Xiaolishan, she just able to designate himself as the crown prince early. It is precisely because of this that Yeliki will firmly support the Yuankai divine sect, not only relying on the Yuankai divine sect as his own support, but also treating it as his own national religion in the future, thereby weakening the influence of the Xiao family. This move was obviously noticed by the Xiao family, but Xiaolishan didn't say anything and no one dared to make an issue of this matter. It can be said that Xiaolishan acquiesced to Yeliki's move. Yeliki used to think that this was his uncle's love for him. But when he saw Xiaolishan kill fellow Earth immortal Zhang Yishan with one sword strike, Yeliki suddenly felt that things were not what he thought. Maybe my uncle just simply doesn't care. This thought quietly arose and was suppressed by Yeliki for a moment, but the seed was already deeply rooted in his heart. After Guzhang and Master Minghai recited a sutra, they stood up and made a Buddhist salute to Xiaolishan. Guzhang walked up to Xiaolishan and said, "Donor Xiao, do you want to pursue Marquis Xinwu again?" As soon as these words came out, everyone's ears immediately pricked up, including Yeliki and Dichu. With a cold face, Xiaolishan picked up the bottle of wine in his hand and drank it in one gulp, shaking his head. Xiaolishan went south originally just to kill Su Tong, but now with Zhang Yishan blocking the way, the disaster has been met. If he continues to pursue and kill him, he will inevitably be involved in the war, and then it will no longer be justified by a personal vendetta. By then, Su Lai will definitely come in person. The two of them are destined to die when they meet. No one wants this day to come early. But it is very good. Donor Xiao has done great good in the world and has immeasurable merit. The two monks Gozang and Minghai clasped their hands together and praised him. Xiaolishan was too lazy to talk nonsense with these two bald donkeys about the great good in the world. These words made him feel harsh, and he sneered, "Then you should thank this old Taoist priest for his sacrifice. According to your logic, should I become an immortal or should I become a Buddha?" Master Minghai, as a master of Zen Buddhism, is best at debating. He immediately smiled and said, "If you advance, you will be a free Buddha, if you retreat, you will be a happy immortal. If you retreat, you will receive countless blessings in the next life. It has its own cause and effect." He. Xiaolishan curled his lips, ignored these two shameless bald donkeys, turned around and walked in front of Yeliki and Dijo. Facing Xiaolishan, Yeliki was a little hesitant for a moment, his eyes wandering and he didn't know where to look. Even though he knew that his uncle loved him very much, this time he lost again and lost all face. Looking at Yeliki, a rare tenderness appeared on Xiaolishan's face and he put his hand on Yeliki's shoulder. 16 years ago, I was punched 3 times until I vomited blood. At that time I just know that the tower outside the Qingshan Tower outside the mountain has been defeated today, but we have a long future ahead. In order to appease his nephew, Xiaolishan even bluntly stated that the battle 16 years ago was tantamount to exposing his own scars. However, Xiaolishan was very relieved to see Yeliki pick himself up again. He immediately looked sideways at Dijo. Just one look made Dijo feel like his whole body was hairy, especially when the Mengtai sword in Xiaolishan's hand made a low buzzing sound, as if he was complaining to his master about the spirit that this pig teammate brought to him. Trauma. Your Majesty. Dijo resisted the urge to escape and stepped forward to prostrate himself. After Xiaolishan thought for a few seconds, he stretched out his hand to pull Dijo up. Why should the leader be so polite? I have reported to His Majesty to make the Yuankai God sect the state religion and build a temple in Taipei Mountain. Next year, His Highness will personally go and consecrate the Yuankai God. Hearing this, Dijo couldn't believe his ears for a moment. This was what he wanted. He didn't dare to mention it before because it was all the benefits Yeliki had promised him, but now it was just a word from Xiaolishan and it was done. He also asked Yeliki to personally confer the title of Yuan-Chi God. The special meaning behind this honor was incredible. When everyone heard this, they looked at each other. Many people smelled some strange smells. I am afraid that there will be big disturbances in the northern barbarian court soon. But it's normal to think about it. The northern barbarians swallowed Suankan, the rich land of the world's granary, and then took control of the central plains. The future is just around the corner. The result of the current battle at Langshan and the division of rivers is self-evident. Anyone with a discerning eye can see that this war cannot be fought at all. Everyone is just waiting for a step to stop fighting and make peace. From now on, the northern barbarians should pay money and withdraw their drums and adjust their people's livelihood. Yeliki will definitely be officially crowned prince by then. This series of actions is Xiaolishan paving the way for his nephew to ascend the throne in the future. Thank you, Your Majesty. Even though Dizhou, as a land god, could not hide his inner excitement at this moment, if not for everyone present watching, Dizhou would have been eager to give Xiaolishan a big gift. It doesn't matter, I would like to thank you, sir, for your help over the years. Xiaolishan reluctantly gave Dizhou a good look. In fact, if it weren't for Yeliki, Mengtajian's dissatisfaction with him would be enough to give him a blow. But, who made Yeliki his good nephew? Uncle, are you going back? Although Yeliki was a little afraid of Xiaolishan, he was still very kind to his uncle. In particular, Xiaolishan's series of operations just now have already explained a lot of things. Xiaolishan nodded. It is not convenient for me to intervene in the following matters. Please be careful with yourself. I will prepare a ceremony for you when you return. After saying that, Xiaolishan raised his hand and heard a rapid hawk chirping in the sky, and the huge kestrel king flew down with its wings flapping. Only then did people really observe the king eagle up close. A very scary monster, exuding a strong demonic aura. It is much larger than an adult man. It has red feathers that look like glass if you look closely. Spirits, spirits, ghosts, monsters, monsters. The level of demons is often much higher than that of other elves and ghosts. They know how to practice and their strength is extraordinary. Xiaolishan's red falcon eagle king is even more outstanding among them. If Dizhou didn't rely on the assistance of the vitality chariot, he would have to risk half his life if he wanted to capture him. I will take back Mengtajian, Hongli, and stay with you to take care of you. Thank you, uncle. Although Mengtajian was gone, Yeliki was in a better mood. Dizhou looked embarrassed, knowing that Mengtajian must be unhappy. Xiaolishan didn't wait long, glanced at the two bald men behind him, stood up and left with his sword in his arms. Amitba. Junior brother, Donor Xiao has already let go. When will you let it go? Master Minghai looked back at his junior brother Guzang and asked meaningfully. Guzang felt a knot in his heart and did not answer, but just clasped his hands together and said sin. Immediately the two said goodbye to everyone and left one after another. Your Highness, let's. When Dizhou saw that Xiaolishan had already left, he whispered. Keep chasing. Yeliki felt uneasy when he thought of Yang Hong. Even if he couldn't kill him, he would definitely not make it easy for him. Next time he caught up with him, he would just blow it up with energy cannons. Even if he killed the minions around him, he would be happy. Just as Yeliki finished speaking, a paper crane suddenly flew from a distance and landed on Dizhou's hand. Dizhou took a look and saw that it was the messenger paper crane of their Yuankai God section. He opened it and took a look. His face suddenly changed and he was shocked. No, Your Highness, return to the camp quickly. Xiao Qi went crazy and ordered the entire army to attack the Sky Jiande camp. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 967. Is Xiao Qi crazy? Rather, Wu Ji is crazy. Xiao Qi was dragging his tired body and was already lying on the bed preparing to sleep when a report came from outside in a hurry, saying that Wu Ji had ordered a night raid on the military camp where grain was being stored. Hearing the news, Xiao Qi couldn't help but change his expression. The military fortress where the grain is stored contains half a year's worth of military rations and baggage for the army. Once destroyed, the entire northern barbarians will face a huge dilemma, and may be severely defeated. He immediately summoned the generals in a hurry. When he learned that Wu Ji personally led the troops to attack, Xiao Qi felt that Wu Ji was crazy. The two of them have been fighting for more than 10 years, fighting 3 or 5 times, losing and losing. The people who know each other best in the world are definitely not their wives and children. This style of play is completely unlike Wu Ji's style. As the commander-in-chief and the leader of the 3 armies, Wu Ji personally led his troops to steal the camp. This approach was simply stupid. Even a third-rate general would not make such a mindless move. Commander, the matter in the grain camp is huge and there is absolutely nothing wrong with it. Please give me the order and let me lead people to quickly go to support. A northern barbarian general looked at Xiao Qi nervously. But at this time, Xiao Qi calmed down and stared at the sand table, with an inexplicable meaning flashing from time to time in his cloudy eyes. Commander, we can't delay any longer. Seeing that Xiao was still silent, everyone had to step forward to ask for orders again. No. But this time Xiao Qi rejected them directly. I know Wu Ji. This man will not take risks easily. There must be a reason for this abnormality. I am afraid it is because the people of the Su family were related to each other the day before yesterday. I think he did this on purpose, fearing that we would divide our forces to encircle and suppress him. When Xiao Qi said this, he suddenly became energetic, walked quickly to the sand table, and pointed at the fortress where grain was stored. This place is easy to defend but difficult to attack. It has a geographical advantage. Although there are only 1,000 people, it can withstand 10,000 people. Wu Ji, an old man, must be lightly armed for a sneak attack at night. It is probably as difficult as climbing to the sky to capture the grain stronghold. Everyone looked at each other, and seeing Xiao Kai's excitement, they not only thought to themselves, but if someone insists on fighting, it may not be impossible to win. Xiao Qi seemed to see through their doubts. He pinched his beard with one hand and laughed. I saw Wu Ji personally leading the team. It was just a trick to surround Wei and rescue Zhao. It was a good strategy, but Wu Ji committed a big mistake. Wrong. Xiao Qi said, pointing to the Langshan central camp, the 3 armies cannot be without a leader, just as a group of dragons cannot be without a leader. Wu Ji left the camp, and the Tianqian army was leaderless. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The northern barbarian generals were also startled by Xiao Kai's words. Commander, do you plan to? Yes, the art of war is cunning. What is false is real, and what is real is false. If Wu Ji is playing false, let's give him a real slap. Xiao Qi raised his hand and slapped it on the table. At this age, he didn't expect to win another big victory. It can be seen how excited Xiao Qi was in his heart. Generals, listen to the order. Xiao Qi turned around and walked up to the stage. Wanyan Hu Shui. The general is here. You lead 30,000 troops as the center forward and charge straight to Tiangan's camp. Promise. Wanyan Zhenzuo, you lead 10,000 cavalry, charge forward from the left, and use crossbows to cover them. Promise. Wang Mokang, you lead 20,000 troops and horses, rush in from the right and seal off Tiangan's cavalry. Remember, no matter what, you must suppress all Tiangan's cavalry in the military camp. Promise. Orders were issued one after another, and the originally quiet Baman camp suddenly began to boil. Xiao Qi had already put on his battle armor and was sitting in the rear with his 30,000 troops. Looking at the night sky, he couldn't help pinching his beard. Wu Ji, you have fought with me for so many years, but I won in the end. Kill. Outside the grain camp, flames were already blazing into the sky, and the sound of killing was deafening. As Xiao Qi said, he carefully selected this place. It is high up and low down, with mountains on the left and right to protect it. If the grain camp is stationed here, even if there are only 1,000 people, one can fight 10. Puff. 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 Hundreds of arrows were shot at once mixed with the heavy rain. In an instant, the Tiangan warriors rushing forward were shot into a hornet's nest. Bang. Bang! Bang! 12 small cannons spewed out plumes of white smoke, and a moment later a huge explosion was heard on the path in front of the camp entrance. Once the carefully prepared red fire divine thunder exploded, a huge shockwave swept up countless rubble and exploded in all directions, leaving no one alive within 10 feet. The corpses of the group of people in front rolled down, and immediately another group of people stepped on the corpses and rushed upward. This is simply pushing forward at the risk of one's life. Commander, we can't attack like this. If we attack like this again, our brothers will all die. A personal guard with a face full of mud fell in front of Wu Ji and wanted to ask Wu Ji to change his style of play. However, Wu Ji just glanced at him with a cold face, pulled out the scimitar from his waist, and knocked the man to the ground with one blow. Send my military order, and those who retreat will be killed without mercy. After saying that, he grabbed the shield of his henchman and charged forward with the arrow in front of him. Seeing that Wu Ji, the commander-in-chief, rushed up with them, all the generals had no reason not to rush, so they quickened their pace, stepped on their brothers' bodies and rushed to the gate of the walled city. Has this old man taken his medicine? Li Bo, who was hiding behind a stone, couldn't help complaining in his heart when he saw Wu Ji's behavior. Didn't it mean that the commander-in-chief of the three armies was stationed at the rear? Why did this guy rush up on his own? Boom! At this time, there was a loud explosion, and a cannonball hit Wu Ji in front of him. The broken rocks and shockwave directly knocked Wu Ji away. Seeing this, Li Bo's heart moved, and he immediately rushed out of the stone where he was hiding, and opened his palm, the power of nature. Boom boom boom. The ground trembled. On the originally flat ground, a wall of earth half as tall as a man suddenly rose. Li Bo lowered his body and rushed to Wu Ji under the cover of the earth wall. He pulled Wu Ji back on the ground and pulled him from the props. He took out a Ad9 reconstruction pill from the book and gave it to Wu Ji to eat. Commander, charging like this will cost your life. Li Bo shook Wu Ji's shoulder and woke him up. Although Wu Ji was blinded by the explosion just now, he could hear clearly and pushed Li Bo away. You know, a hammer, this opportunity is only once, miss it. No, I will never have a chance in this life. As Xiao Qi said, the two have been fighting for so many years, and each has already figured out the other's thoughts. But it was more than 10 years of understanding that allowed Wu Ji to conclude that Xiao Qi must have concluded that he was just besieging Wei to rescue Zhao, otherwise he would not have come out to steal the camp with only such a few troops. At that time, Xiao Kai's character will definitely raise his troops to attack, and this is the opportunity he created for himself. But this opportunity only comes once, and Xiao Qi must cut off his food and grass before he reacts, otherwise the battle will be really lost. As for whether Xiao Qi would rush ahead of him and defeat the three armies, Wu Ji was not sure about this, but since the army was in danger, how could there be no risk at all? It was nothing more than meeting on a narrow road and the brave would win. Thinking of this, Wu Ji raised his shield again. Charge me. This old gangster is really desperate for his life. Li Bo could only curse when he saw this, but when he saw the soldiers rushing up behind him, he could only bite the bullet and rush up. Now, he no longer hides it, and activates the element anger, kept calling out earthen walls to provide cover for everyone. Li Bo's strength is not very strong. He only has a set of natural prop cards, which are not even strengthened. He is not a certified player. He can only be said to be a field master and is still very reluctant. In this era, 100 the husband's strength is not much worse than him. The quality of the earth wall he summons is so bad that it can even be penetrated by the opponent's bow and arrow. But his joining undoubtedly greatly increased the speed of everyone's charge. I saw a few good soldiers in the army, their figures moving left and right, taking advantage of the cover of the earth wall, quickly rushed to the foot of the grain village. At once, several people punched together, smashed the gate of the grain village, and led the people to rush in first. Of course, The price of such a lone army going deep was to be instantly killed by 600 northern barbarian warriors forming a military formation. But then more and more people rushed into the grain village, and in an instant the offensive and defensive battle turned into a stalemate and bloody battle. Formation. Seeing that people had rushed into the grain village, Wu Ji quickly ordered the surrounding soldiers to gather into formations. The two formations collided, and only the sound of tearing flesh and blood and the clash of swords could be heard. Li Bo could only go with the flow and rush forward. The archers hiding on the wall seemed to like him very much, and they kept shooting at Li Bo with their bows. There was only a harsh sound of breaking wind, and the arrow almost pierced Li Bo's hole and flew out with great power. Fortunately, Li Bo did not lack life-saving item cards. Although he was not dead, it almost killed him. At this time, Li Bo's fierceness that had been suppressed by Su Tong was also aroused, and he was just like the vigorous and reckless man when he first entered the script, howling and screaming. "Okay, if I don't show off my power, you guys will think I'm a sick cat." Li Bo roared angrily and stamped his feet on the ground. Another active skill of Elemental Wrath, Elemental Assimilation Activation. Suddenly, a large amount of soil poured out from the ground and tightly wrapped his body. Li Bo instantly turned into a 2-meter-tall stone giant, swinging countless sharp stone spears with both arms to hit the archers. Bang bang bang. A large number of stone spears were thrown out by Li Bo. Some northern barbarian warriors were unable to dodge and were directly killed on the spot by these stone spears weighing hundreds of kilograms. I don't know if his incredible luck has exerted some miraculous effect. So much so that after the stone spear broke several pieces of wood under the camp, there was a loud click, and the watchtower above tilted down and hit the barbarian army's formation without any bias, causing the wood to shatter for a moment. It fell and smashed it, causing the barbarian army to run away, and the grease used to light the fire in the watchtower also spilled out. After being contaminated by sparks, the fire exploded among the crowd in an instant. This time, the northern barbarian warriors, who had been advancing and retreating in an orderly manner and relying on their own strength, were caught off guard and fell into chaos. Wu Ji, who was standing behind, his eyes lit up when he saw this. He stared at Li Bo and praised, "This man is really my lucky general." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 968. Soon the Liangzai was destroyed. Blood spilled down the ramp of the grain village, dyeing the entire ground red. Wu Ji looked at the granary in front of him, his face muscles trembling with excitement. There were 6,000 men and horses when they came, but now there are only 2,000 men left. Such casualties are not small. But the results achieved are indescribably rich. All the northern barbarians' grain stores were here. This place was destroyed. Even if the barbarian army wanted to raise more grain, it would take at least half a month. However, the weather was about to turn cold and winter was approaching. The northern barbarians simply could not afford it, and they themselves could not afford it. They won't be given the chance to delay. It can be said that once the food here is destroyed, the northern barbarians will undoubtedly be defeated. After more than 10 years of fighting, he finally came out on top. Thinking of this, Wu Ji wanted to look up to the sky and scream, "Xiao Qi, you are defeated." However, after thinking about it, Wu Ji calmed down. Now that he has a chance to win, the next step is a great opportunity to gain credit for himself. He ordered some people to stay behind and light the food and grass at midnight, and then hurried back with the remaining troops around him. Compared with Wu Ji's luck, Xiao Kai's face on the other side of the battlefield became even more ugly. When Wu Ji left the camp, he had already made defensive arrangements. The Tiangan army had gathered early and formed a formation. Relying on this favorable terrain, the battlefield in front turned into a meat grinder, continuously devouring the lives of soldiers on both sides. This is really a sure field. In the woods in the distance, Su Tong and his party had rushed back early. Gao Zhou couldn't help but feel his scalp numb when he looked at the red-eyed battlefield in front of him. The total number of both sides was almost 200,000, which made the battlefield in front of him. It has turned into a sea of blood, with murderous intent rising into the sky, turning into a dark cloud over Wolf Mountain. Su Tong used his life eye to look around and found that the fate of the two camps was entangled, just like a fight between dragons and tigers. It's just that the chi phase on Tiangan's side is obviously much weaker, probably because Wu Ji, the coach, is not here. General, you see, the left and right sides have been blocked by the northern barbarians. The cavalry in the camp cannot rush out. How about we attack from the side and defeat the barbarian army on his right first? Wu Zhe pointed to the barbarian army on the right side of the camp and said. No. No one is allowed to move without my order. However, Su Tong did not adopt Wu Zhe's suggestion. Their total number was only 3,000. Even if they added the nightmare cavalry, they would disappear without a trace like a drop of water falling into the stream. There was no way to control this situation. Such a large-scale war. If he activates the 9 Immortals Cauldron, he may be able to kill most of these barbarian troops with this treasure, but once the 9 Immortals formation is deployed, the soldiers on Tiangan's side will also be affected. The 9 Immortals formation has no ability to identify ourselves and the enemy. Except for those who control the formation, it attacks almost indiscriminately. So now is not the time for them to take action, they have to wait. Su Tong looked in the direction behind Bowman, and a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. Come on, don't retreat. Wanyan Hashui, who was responsible for the attack, stood at the rear and supervised the battle, waving his sword. The army attacks Tiangan's camp ahead with all its strength. At the same time, all kinds of siege equipment launched a full-scale attack. Bows and crossbows were flying everywhere, and iron cannons were roaring. But the Tiangan camp itself occupies a geographical advantage, not to mention that it was well prepared. I saw a dark crowd of Tiangan warriors. Hundreds of them were divided into a group. The front row held shields and the back row waved swords. Following the rhythm of drumsticks, slowly crush the barbarian army in front. The collision of flesh and sword made the warriors on both sides almost turn red-eyed. Everyone couldn't see clearly what was going on around them, so they could only rush forward in a crowd to the sound of drums. During this period, someone was unfortunately hit by an arrow and fell to the ground. Before he could get up, he was kicked one after another by the brothers behind him. Trampled alive into a pulp. Maybe someone saw it, but no one dared to stop, and they were not allowed to save people. If they stopped, they would die. Boom boom boom. People around him were constantly being hit by artillery, and blood was sprinkled on everyone's face like rain. Occasionally, you could see stumps and broken arms falling on you. But in this meat grinder-like battlefield, all everyone can do is rush forward, wave the sword in their hands, and aim at the enemy's head to chop it down. General, we can't fight any longer. We've almost lost all our brothers. We need to retreat first and wait until the armies on the left and right come in before we charge. One of the commanders under Sailor Wanyan, who looked at the soldiers in front of him who suffered heavy casualties, his eyes were red. Wanyan Hashui was more anxious than anyone else, but seeing the casualties of rushing forward like this increasing, he began to retreat. When he looked around, he saw that Wang Mokang's troops on the right had not moved yet. Gritted his teeth and asked the troops to retreat. But this time he withdrew. Xiao Qi was so angry that he almost cursed his mother. Idiot, whoever asked him to retreat should give me the order. Anyone among the three armies who dares to retreat will be killed. After Xiao Qi gave the order, he pulled out the sword from his waist and rushed forward to supervise the army in person. But the people under his command hurriedly stopped him, not daring to let Xiao Qi get into danger easily. After all, he was the commander-in-chief of the three armies. If he made a mistake, the entire barbarian army would be in chaos. Commander, Wait a moment. General Zhenzuo's men have already rushed into the enemy camp. General Wang Mokang has blocked the right side. Their cavalry cannot rush out. Tiangan will be defeated. The cronies stopped Xiao Qi and sent him the battle report from the front. Xiao Kai's face looked much better now. There was no commander-in-chief of the three armies, and there were more than a dozen generals fighting on their own. No matter how well they cooperated, it was impossible to clearly see the direction of the entire battlefield. Just as Tiangan is currently defending blindly, it is completely a fight between trapped beasts. If Wu Ji were here, he would definitely try his best to have Tiangan's cavalry break out of the camp from the rear, cooperate with the front army, and break up the front army's offensive. But judging from the current situation, Tiangan is already in disarray, and victory is only a matter of time. But for some reason, Xiao Qi always had a very bad feeling in his heart. Why hasn't Wu Ji come back yet? Xiao Qi glanced sideways in the direction of Liangzai. Normally, if he didn't go to reinforce, Wu Ji must have known that his plan had been discovered. At this time, he should have rushed back to support, but he has not been seen yet. Thinking of this, Xiao Qi had already roughly thought of the reason, but the reason only dared to flash through his mind and he did not dare to think about it in depth. This is how people are, the more at such a time, the less likely they will veto themselves easily. Even though he knew that he might fall into the trap, he still gritted his head and felt that he was not wrong. Even if Wu Ji really went to steal the camp, it didn't matter. As long as he defeated the main force of Tiangan in front of him, he could retreat in style. Upon thinking of this, Xiao Qi took a look, and when he saw Wanyan Hashui who started to retreat again, Xiao Qi was ready to kill this guy. Fortunately, at this moment, a rapid eagle cry tore through the sky. Then I saw a huge kestrel descending from the sky and flying over the heads of everyone on the battlefield. When it appeared above the Tiangan camp, its wings spread out, and a huge demonic wind blew away sand and rocks, instantly causing the Tiangan forward army to become chaotic. Immediately after the kestrel soared into the sky, its bright red wings flapped, changing the direction of the wind in the sky and the earth, causing the northern barbarian army to instantly stand downwind. It's the Kestrel Eagle King. Seeing this kestrel, Xiao Qi and others were greatly inspired. Even the morale of the northern barbarian troops increased greatly. The Red Falcon Eagle King is Xiao Lishan's calling card. Even if he does not personally participate in the battle, he is still a symbol of the entire northern barbarian spirit. What surprised the northern barbarian troops was still behind. A loud boom was heard in the distance, and the mountains exploded, and the Vitality chariot rushed into the battlefield. The huge chariot rushed towards Tiangan's camp. The muzzles of the cannons protruded from the side of the Yuankai chariot. As the muzzles emitted a dazzling light, a hot energy bomb flashed out from the muzzles. In an instant, the strong light turned the surrounding world into black and white. The next second a large crater with a diameter of 10 meters was blasted in front of Tiangan camp. The Tiangan forward formation was defeated on the spot. Ha 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 ha, I came back at the right time, kill me. Yelaki's face was full of excitement. Although he didn't know why Xiao Qi suddenly attacked Tiangan, now it seemed that it was a good choice. Boom boom boom. At this time, several loud noises suddenly came from behind Tiangan camp. Dichu's expression changed, and he quickly controlled the Yuankai chariot to retreat. Soon huge flames exploded around the Yuankai chariot. The terrifying impact turned into purple smoke in the air, causing the Yuankai chariot to lose control instantly and almost being thrown out. Yelaki and others fell to the ground in embarrassment, almost falling into the Vitality furnace. It's the mighty cannon. As soon as the chariot stabilized, Dizhou quickly controlled the chariot to retreat. This is Tianqin's powerful cannon specially used to deal with Yuankai chariots. It has the power to crack mountains and crack rocks. Every cannonball has the power of destruction. The strong gunpowder smell contained in it is dozens of times stronger than the Vulcan bombs in Chinwu Pass. It's just that this thing is too expensive. One cannonball costs thousands of taels of gold. Therefore, Wu Ji had already given instructions not to fire unless he saw the Vitality Chariot. Now 4 artillery shells exploded around the Yuankai chariot at the same time, almost destroying the Yuankai chariot. Fortunately, Tianqian lacked unified command and the Shinwei cannon fired too early. If Wu Ji was here, he would definitely keep these 4 cannons in Yuankai. The tank fired again when it rushed into the front camp. Now Yeliki and others did not dare to rush in again, but the front camp had been torn open at this moment. Even if they did not rush in, they still had a chance to win. Kill. Wanyan Hashui raised his sword and took the lead, rushing towards the opened gap. This is not because Tiangan's generals are too weak, but because everyone is fighting independently and there is no unified order for chaos to occur. Haha, we win. Xiao Qi sat at the rear and saw that the gap in the front camp had been torn open, and his mood suddenly improved. Send the order, the whole army will attack. Following Xiao Kai's order, the 30,000 northern barbarian troops at the rear quickly charged forward. Xiao Qi planned to engulf the entire Tiangan camp in one go this time. But not long after the army from the rear attacked, the sound of galloping horses suddenly came from the hilltop on the side. In a moment, a cavalry led by more than 100 nightmare hussars rushed out of the forest and headed straight for Xiao Qi. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 969. Note, recently this chapter was said not to be displayed, but I can see it from the background. Xiao Qi was caught off guard by the sudden cavalry. The northern barbarian warriors who were about to rush out were completely confused. They didn't know where this cavalry was coming from. It turns out that Su Tong has been waiting for this opportunity. They only have 2,000 men. Even if there are elites like the Nightmare Hussars, their number is too small. The last time they fought at Luyapai, they suffered huge losses. Now they only have more than 100 people, so it is difficult to form a scale. Even rushing into the battlefield in front of them would be of no avail, so the only chance for a comeback was to kill Xiao Qi. As the saying goes, capture the thief first and capture the king first. As long as the leader is killed first, the northern barbarian army will naturally be in chaos. In the same situation without a coach, Tianqian is passively defensive. Even if the generals below fight on their own, it can at least ensure that there will be no big chaos. But as the attacking side, the northern barbarians have a bigger problem. The damage is getting worse and worse, and the morale is getting worse and worse. Without the command of the rear commander, it will be a matter of time before the collapse. Commander, run quickly. Seeing the cavalry rushing over, the guards around Xiao Qi immediately put Xiao Qi on the horse and sent Xiao Qi away quickly. Not good. On the other side, Yeliki and others also noticed this. When they saw the conspicuous flying dragon flag in the hands of this cavalry, they immediately realized who the owner of this cavalry was. Now it was Yeliki and others' turn to panic. Quick, quick, go save the old commander. Dizhou quickly controlled the Vitality Chariot to chase after him. But whether it was the Vitality Chariot or Xiao Kai's horse, they were not fast enough in front of the cavalry with the blessing of flying dragon flag. Seeing the pursuers behind him approaching, Xiao Qi, who was over 70 years old, showed a rare look of panic. Suddenly a sharp hawk's cry penetrated the sky. I saw the huge body of the Kestrel Eagle King swooping down from the clouds and heading straight towards Xiao Qi. Hey! Seeing that the beast finally appeared, Su Tong, who was hiding in the woods, smiled cruelly. I've been waiting for you for a long time. I saw Su Tong raise his hand to draw the dragon talisman, and a golden light in his hand was like a giant python emerging from the forest, flying out of the woods and appearing behind the Kestrel Eagle King like lightning. The Kestrel Eagle King is worthy of being a raptor that has become a monster. Sensing the crisis, He immediately gave up saving Xiaoqi, turned around and rushed into the sky. His body rotated rapidly in mid-air, shooting out countless bright red feathers, and blocked the incoming dragon shrinking talisman. Break up! But before the Kestrel Eagle King could figure out who was attacking him, a bolt of lightning suddenly struck down and hit the Kestrel Eagle King directly. Boom! The lightning wrapped around the body of the Kestrel Eagle King like countless silver snakes shuttled between the gaps in the feathers, but it did not really hurt the Kestrel Eagle King. As the Kestrel Eagle King shook his body, all the lightning on his body was scattered. When he looked up, he saw a plump little fat man standing in the clouds. He was twisting his fat little butt in the clouds and making a face towards the Kestrel Eagle King. Last time at Luyupai, the Kestrel Eagle King failed to successfully attack Xiaopang. Today, Xiaopang wants to pay back the debt. Faced with the provocation of the little fat man, the Kestrel Eagle King claimed to be the son of the sky, so how could he endure it? He immediately ignored Xiaoqi, who was being chased on the ground, spread his wings, and rushed straight towards the little fat man. I'm afraid this beast is already a perfect demon king. Even thunder can't hurt him. But just in time, when I catch you, I'll pluck your feathers and make me a cloak. Su Tong stared at the Kestrel Eagle King flying into the sky, and whispered to himself. Then he turned his eyes and saw the Vitality Chariot approaching in the distance, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. I was almost injured by this thing a few times before. This thing is really a big trouble. Hey, just in time, let's destroy this thing first. Su Tong raised his eyebrows slightly, reached out, and took out the big rhinoceros bow from the prop book. Raising his arm, he saw dense layers of dragon scales covering Su Tong's arm, and at the same time, a dark green arrow was attached to the bowstring. 3 divine arrows, Pa Jun, Xiaotian, and Lonke. The power of the broken army is average, but the victory lies in numbers. Xiaotian does not target entities, but it has the power to break through luck. Only the dragon bird has the terrifying lethality to kill with one strike. Passive skill, Peck to kill. It consumes 3000 script points and launches a killing attack on the target, ignoring the target's own armor and magic weapon defense, and bursting out with unprecedented high penetrating damage. Buzz. With a slight trembling, the bowstring was pulled open, and suddenly there were sand and stones flying between the sky and the earth, and all kinds of brilliance were lingering. Endless energy gathered crazily, and the surrounding air seemed to be drained out in an instant. The phantom of a dragon bird appeared on the tip of the arrow. The wings were spread high, as if they were about to take off at any moment. Wuju, you are hiding, Su Tong shouted in the team channel, reminding Chang Wuzi to hide. The dragon scales on his arms split open, and he pulled the rhinoceros bow into the shape of a full moon. A light arrow formed on the bowstring. When he let go, a divine light shot out. In an instant, the void in front of him was pierced. Dizhou and others were still riding on the Vitality Chariot. When Dizhou noticed something strange, he turned around and his pupils shrank instantly. He saw a phantom of a dragon bird flying from the side. Wherever it passed, the sky and the earth were covered. A black crack was torn apart. No. Dizhou didn't even have a chance to react. He only felt the Vitality Chariot shaking violently, and a huge force penetrated directly into the belly of the chariot. Kaka kaka. Time seemed to be slowed down several times at this moment. Countless cracks on the deck spread like spider webs, and red elemental flames began to gush out through the cracks. Dizhou was screaming in his heart, but he could only watch the scene helplessly. Boom. Along with the huge rumbling sound, everyone, whether it was Tiangan or Buman, stared at the huge fireball rising from the Vitality Chariot. In just the blink of an eye, this Vitality Chariot broke apart in front of everyone's sight. Countless delicate mechanical parts splashed around with the spurting firelight. Boom! Boom! Until the chariot hit the ground heavily, sending up a huge cloud of smoke and dust. In a moment of shock, No one in the Tiangan camp shouted, "Okay," followed by a landslide and tsunami-like shouts. There is no doubt that the collapse of the Vitality Chariot gave countless warriors a shot in the arm. Look over there. At this time, a scene that made people even more desperate appeared. Far away to the east of the Bowman camp, an isolated smoke cloud could be seen rising high into the sky. All the northern barbarian generals turned pale. They knew that that was the direction of Liangzai, and Liangzai had been lost. This time, the originally high morale suffered a huge blow again. Just when everyone felt a chill in their hearts and didn't know what to do next, many northern barbarian warriors suddenly discovered that the commander Xiao Qi sitting at the rear was missing. Even the handsome flag disappeared. You must know that in a war of this scale, the soldiers' innermost beliefs are all supported by this commander's flag. If the commander's flag is not there, it means that the commander has fled. The repeated blows instantly made the hearts of the northern barbarian warriors fall to the bottom. Dong 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 dong. At the same time, the sound of drums and hammers rose from behind the Tiangan camp. Wu Ji's flag was raised high, and long-lost military orders began to be issued one after another through the sound of war drums. Seeing the rear, Wu Ji had already taken advantage of the chaos and rushed into the military camp, taking over the command again. The northern barbarian army was defeated. Immediately, some generals turned around and ran out with their own tribal warriors. The army was defeated like a mountain. Even if there were still people who wanted to fight to the death, they were unable to recover. Crackling. At the same time, the ruins of the Vitality Chariot could be seen wailing all over the place. All the disciples of Yuan Kai-shen cult were seriously injured, and no one was spared from the huge impact. Boom. A hand in the ruins pushed the wooden board in front of him violently, and Dijo, whose face was covered with gray, stumbled out of the ruins. His clothes were torn into strips, and he turned around with stars in his eyes. After calming down, looking at the Vitality Chariot that had become a piece of scrap metal, I almost spit out a mouthful of old blood. The most important treasure of the Yuan-Kai God sect was destroyed in this way. One can imagine how depressed Dijo was, but he couldn't care less about being sad for the moment. He turned his eyes and hurriedly looked for Yeliki. After rummaging around and removing the wooden board, he found Yeliki lying in the rubble. Judging from the situation, he didn't seem to have any serious injuries. Dijo hurriedly stepped forward to remove the things that were pressing on Yeliki's body. The result was that, his face suddenly changed. I saw that Yeliki's lower body was injured by debris and was bleeding. Seeing this situation, Dikayagang hurriedly injected his energy into Yeliki's body, temporarily stopping the wound. Your Majesty. At this time, a sneaky eunuch emerged from the ruins. When he saw the situation, he quickly grabbed a handful of dirt from the ground and wiped it on his face. Then he ran out crying and quickly came to Yeliki and tried to wake Yeliki up, but when he got close, he suddenly got a reminder of the mission. He couldn't help but feel moved, and shouted in the team channel, "Boss, I have a special mission, I plan to try it." In fact, Su Tong did not expect that the effect of his arrow would be so good. He planned to take the opportunity to beat up the drowned dog. After hearing Chang Wuhan's words, he asked Chang Wuhan to share the mission. Special mission, escort. As the future prince of the northern barbarians, Yeliki has a great influence. If you are willing to lend a helping hand at this time, you can successfully become a popular person around Yeliki. Mission requirement, protect Yeliki. Mission reward, special prop card. Mission failed, critical. Note, this mission is extremely risky, please consider it carefully. Looking at the mission sent by Chang Wuju, Su Tong couldn't help but fell into deep thought, but then he thought about it, even killing Yeliki now might not be a good thing. After all, if Yeliki died, he would probably fall into the endless pursuit of Xiaolishan. This was not the result he wanted to see. After thinking about it again and again, Su Tong did not take any more action, but transferred his consciousness to the second soul. On the body. At this moment, the little fat man, the second soul, is fighting and running with the Kestrel Eagle King. He is far away from the battlefield. Although the little fat man is good at flying, he is not as good as a raptor like the Kestrel Eagle King. The sky is him in the territory. Xiaopang relied on his thunder method to continuously push back the attacks of the Kestrel Eagle King, but the fight was also extremely embarrassing. Seeing this, Su Tong's heart moved, and he decisively took over Xiaopang's consciousness. He saw the Kestrel Eagle King in the white cloud swooping towards him. Su Tong suddenly raised his hand, put his chubby little hands together, and moved towards the Kestrel Eagle King bows down. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 970. Seeing the little fat man suddenly raising his hand and bowing down to him, the Kestrel Eagle King felt weird in his heart, thinking that this little thing was planning to surrender to him. Little did he know that after bowing, the Kestrel Eagle King suddenly felt that his surrounding vision was blurred. Following a buzzing sound in his head, he felt that someone had hit him hard with a hammer on the back of his head. For a moment, stars appeared in front of his eyes, and his body instantly lost balance in mid-air and fell straight down. Su Tong pinched his fingers and punched out the 5 dragon binding talismans. The 5 flower binding tied up the red falcon eagle king tightly. Perhaps the Kestrel Eagle King never imagined that this simple and cute little chubby boy could be so dirty. No wonder it was unprepared. It can only be said that in this era, the evil magic technique of Bashan Cow is definitely ahead of its time. Each generation of magic in this world has its own characteristics. The further you go, the more majestic the spells are. The techniques of attracting heavenly phenomena upwards, grounding evil spirits downwards, and practicing techniques are more focused on head-on confrontation. After all, resources in this era are still very abundant. If it is not a top-notch technique, no one will care about it. Go deep and study. As time went on, resources became scarce, and the techniques began to become more obscure, and split into various branches. The Master's generation is already at the intersection of the age of ending laws and the new era. Sitting on immortal stake, flying head down, and red and white demons can be said to have developed the harmful effects of magic to the extreme, and the Master's Shankao is even more so. The Master among them. The Kestrel Eagle King encountered this kind of magic for the first time, so it would be strange if he didn't suffer a loss. Su Tong reached out and grabbed the Kestrel Eagle King in front of him. Seeing that the big bird was shaking its head and trying to wake up, he raised his leg and kicked it unconscious. Not long after, he saw 4 furry black mesons, rolling into a ball and returning with the dragon bird arrows he had shot. Su Tong took a sideways look and found that one was missing. Why is one missing? Where is the other one? Facing Su Tong's inquiry, the 4 meatballs turned around and looked at each other, with expressions of confusion and question marks on their faces. While Su Tong was looking for another lost meatball with a grimace, Dizhou was lying on the ground rummaging through the ruins of the Vitality Chariot. The Vitality Chariot was destroyed, but there was one thing in the Vitality Chariot that had to be taken away. That is the core of the Vitality Chariot, the Vitality Divine Furnace. That is the core treasure of the Yuankai Divine Section. It is said to be a treasure handed down from ancient times. The Yuankai Chariot can be driven only by using the Yuankai Divine Furnace as its core. Boom, boom, boom. Pushing aside the melted iron plate, Dizhou took a closer look, and sure enough, he saw a small golden furnace no more than the size of a palm among the ruins. Who would have thought that the core of the divine furnace of vitality that can dissolve all things would be such a delicate object? It's okay, it's good that this thing is still there. When Dizhou saw the vitality furnace, He felt relieved. But just as he was about to reach out to take it, he saw the furnace shaking slightly, and then the golden furnace moved, and a furry meatball pushed the furnace on his head. What is this? Dijo was startled, but when he saw the little guy swaying with his own artifact, his heart suddenly lifted up. No, 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 little guy, don't move, quick, give me the thing, be good, I'm here, there's something delicious. In order to stabilize the little guy, Dichu took out a vitality gem from the gold bag on his waist and put it in his hand. The two big eyes of the flesh ball in front of him stared at the vitality gem, and he was indeed attracted to it. But as soon as Dichu moved his feet, the little guy immediately moved back with the stove in alert. Now Dijo was in trouble. The northern barbarian army in the distance had been defeated like a mountain, and the black hand that had just attacked them had not yet appeared. On one side was the fainting fourth prince, and on the other was the suppressing treasure. Immediately, Dijo was in a state of confusion. He looked at the gold silk bag in his hand and simply threw the gold ribbon forward. Here, here, give it all to you, they are all good things. Looking at the gold silk bag in front of him, the little guy's eyes widened immediately. He stepped forward, opened his mouth, and bit down on the gold silk bag. Bring it to you. Seeing that the little guy had taken the bait, Dichu quickly jumped up, opened his big hand, and grabbed it. But little did he know that Meatball was very clever and was much faster than he thought. He flew back to avoid Dichu's hand. Seeing that the little thing dodged away, Dijo opened his palm and raised his hand. I slapped it with a large vitality hand seal, intending to slap this gadget to death first. But who would have thought that this inconspicuous-looking flesh ball suddenly glowed with golden light, and its originally grey appearance suddenly turned into a golden little flesh ball. It was slapped by the big handprint of vitality, and it even used the strength to support it. The Yuankai divine furnace bit the gold silk bag and flew out of the gap. No. Now Dijo was dumbfounded. He quickly climbed out and took a look around, and found that the meatballs were gone. He burst into tears for a moment. He had lived for such a long time, but something was stolen under his nose. Dijo was angry. His facial features were all twisted together, and the successive blows made him spurt out a mouthful of blood 3 feet away. After that, whenever Dichu saw a round thing, he couldn't help but want to slap it, but this time it's all a story for later. Now Dijo could only run away with Yeliki and the little eunuch beside him. If he didn't run and wait for the defeated army in front to come over, the army would be in chaos and there would be trouble. The northern barbarians were defeated. This result exceeded everyone's expectations. Wu Ji packed up the army and chased them for 20 miles, killing countless northern barbarian warriors. He saw the corpses of the northern barbarians lying on the ground in a pool of blood, and without exception, their left ears were cut off. The blood dyed the earth red. However, Wu Ji did not let anyone chase them down. Theoretically, they could take advantage of the victory and pursue them, or even let the northern barbarians vomit out the Xian kingdom's territory. However, winter has arrived, and Tiangan's military supplies can no longer keep up. If the war continues, the entire army will become passive. After this battle, the northern barbarians will not be able to start another war for at least 10 years. They will definitely send envoys to negotiate peace in the coming year. At that time, the heavenly stems can open their mouths and bite off a big piece of fat from the northern barbarians. At the same time, on the other side, Gao Zhou and others led the team to pursue Xiao Qi to a desperate place. Seeing that there was no way to go ahead, Xiao Kai's face turned frighteningly pale. He turned back and glanced in the direction of Lang Shan, his eyes full of hatred and unwillingness. Are you wrong? That's right, whether Wu Ji really stole the camp or not, there was no problem at all with his strategy of leading his troops straight to Lang Shan. After all, whether the food and grass were destroyed or not, as long as he defeated the Tiangan camp, it was an irrelevant issue. This is like 3 enemies going to steal the Baron, and 2 people guarding the home. At this time, you choose to push directly in the middle and demolish the opponent's crystals along the way. As a result, it was not dismantled and was surrounded and defeated from behind. The strategy was right, but why did he lose? The more Xiao Qi thought about it, the more he felt aggrieved. With red eyes, he looked at Gao Zhou and the others and sneered, "Although I am defeated today, the time is not with me, and God will destroy me." After saying this, without waiting for Gao Zhou and others to take action, Xiao Qi raised his hand and put the sword across his throat, and wiped it sideways, blood dripping down the blade. Seeing the defeat of this famous general in the world, Gao Zhou and others couldn't help but sigh. De Ya controlled the body of the uncle, walked to Xiao Kai's body, bowed his hands, and then drew his sword and beheaded Xiao Qi. He just carried the head and turned back. And this battle finally came to an end with Xiao Kai's defeat. Gejigji. Su Tong wandered around the battlefield and finally found the little guy who had fallen behind. Well, it should be said that the little guy found it himself. It seemed that the 5 of them had some kind of sense for each other, and they could sense each other's position no matter how far apart they were. Su Tong originally wanted to scold him, but in the end, the little guy happily handed him the golden stove and the golden bag as if offering a treasure. Su Tong didn't care at first, thinking it was the gold jewelry he had stolen from somewhere, but as soon as he dropped the thing, Su Tong's expression changed. Not to mention the gold wire pocket, it is full of vitality crystals. These vitality crystals are the product of a very long time of refining in the vitality furnace and repeated compression with the secret method of the vitality god. Each crystal contains a large amount of energy. It was originally used to quickly replenish vitality at critical moments. The treasures that charged the chariot now all fell into his hands. Even more exaggerated is this small golden furnace. As soon as Su Tong got it, he immediately felt a very subtle feeling, as if this small golden furnace had some kind of relationship with his own great son Ruyi furnace, causing the two to resonate. This really surprised me. He immediately threw it into the prop book and took a look. Su Tong almost laughed to the back of his head. Good guys, there is the 9 Immortals cauldron in front and the vitality furnace behind. Are these little guys the reincarnation of the god of wealth? If he didn't even know who his parents were, he would have added these little guys to his family tree no matter what. Vitality creation furnace. It is said that it is an acquired treasure created by the founder of the Yuankai God sect with the treasures of heaven and earth and the secret method of the Yuankai God sect. Passive skill 1, 3-point vitality. Ability to transform all objects into vitality and use them for one's own use. Passive skill 2, attached energy. This item can be embedded into some kind of prop and used as a driving device to provide continuous power to the object. Active skill 1, vitality and divine fire. It consumes 3000 script points, sprays out vitality divine fire, and burns all materials within a range of 800 meters in front into a vitality state. Duration, 1 minute. Cooling time, 30 seconds. Active skill 2, vitality refinement. Spending 200 script points you can separate the vitality in the furnace, and use the different attributes of the vitality to enhance your status. Duration, 30 minutes. Cooling time, 4 hours. After Su Tong carefully read the entries of this thing line by line, he felt relieved immediately. This thing must be closely related to Yan Shu. Because the above ability is almost exactly the same as my own great son Ruyi furnace. The only difference between the two is that my own great son Ruyi furnace is my ability to gain the blessing of the innate Taoist base and cut off the Tao to establish my body. And this thing is an acquired treasure refined with the help of heavenly materials and earthly treasures and various secret methods. One is innate and the other is acquired. He can conclude that the original owner of this thing must be a big shot in the Yanshu lineage. However, for some reason, he was unable to build an innate Ruyi furnace like his own, so he simply used an acquired one instead. A fantastic idea, It's really admirable. This also explains the existence of such things as the Yuankai chariot. You must know that Yanshu masters have unimaginable creativity with puppets. This Yuankai chariot probably also belongs to the genre of Yanshu puppet. After getting the treasure, Su Tong was in a good mood. He took out 5 golden vitality gems from the gold bag as rewards and distributed them to the 5 little guys. The little guys who received the gem rewards were rolling on the floor with joy. Especially the one who made the meritorious service this time, with a proud expression on his face, as if he was telling his 4 brothers, anyway, if I work hard, everyone will have something to eat. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 971. Ignore how these little guys who get the benefits are making trouble. Su Tong picked up the reins and carried the big bird slowly toward the camp. On the road, many warriors could be seen busy harvesting the left ears of the northern barbarian warriors like they were harvesting wheat. Everyone's face showed simple joy, which made people think of the smile on the face of the farmer's uncle during the great harvest. The big bird carried by Su Tong naturally attracted the attention of many people. That was the kestrel eagle king, the demon beast kept in captivity by Xiaolishan, and now he was being carried on his shoulders by his own general, not to mention how inspiring it was. When he arrived at the camp, Wu Ji was already waiting for him in front of the camp with a cold face. Seeing that only Su Tong came back, Wu Ji frowned, and a bit of anger suddenly appeared on his face. Just as he was about to criticize, he saw a team rushing back from the distance. The leader was the eldest young master of the Su family who was carrying the head. Today's great uncle, Su Fan. Just as Su Fan's figure passed by Su Tong, Dia also took the opportunity to return to Su Tong's hall. Su Fan was in a trance for a while. When he came back to his senses, he realized that he had arrived at Wu in front of the introduction. There was a bloody human head in his hand. Oh! Looking at the head in his hand, Su Fan was frightened and quickly threw it away. The head rolled down in front of Wu Ji. It was the head of Xiao Qi, the head coach of the Northern Barbarian Southern Expedition. This time even Wu Ji was shocked for a moment. Seeing Xiao Kai's angry expression with eyes wide open, Wu Ji felt a mixture of emotions in his heart. My heart felt a little empty, and the joy of victory was instantly wiped away. Both of them are famous generals in the world, but they have been facing each other since they were partial generals. They have been fighting for more than 10 years, and each has his own victory or defeat. Even if they don't speak more than 100 words to each other, but they already regard each other as the confidant who knows them best. I didn't expect that this last battle would be a way to say goodbye. It really made Wu Ji feel sad in his heart. Uncle Guo. At this time, Su Fan suddenly rolled his eyes and passed out. Everyone hurriedly helped him up, and Su Tong pretended to step forward, checked his pulse, and said, "It's okay, it's just that Uncle Guo is working too hard. Take him down to rest quickly." Working hard? The skin on his thighs was all bald, and he didn't feel bad that it was really not his own thing. Su Fan's body bones could not withstand Su Tong and the others' night-long raids and repeated battles. In addition, being possessed by Dia, a fox fairy, will shorten his lifespan, and for Su Fan, it will be even more serious. This serious illness will probably last 10.5 months, and this guy will not even be able to get out of bed. Su Tong thinks it's fair. If you want military merit, I'll give it to you, but you have to get it yourself. Thinking of this, Su Tong raised his head and glanced at Daya. As soon as Daya returned to the entrance of the hall, the 5 little guys immediately presented the golden vitality crystals in their hands to Daya as if they were offering treasures, and rolled beside Daya. Squeeze your shoulders and beat your legs, it's good to be diligent. It's a pity that Daya only held the pink and cute little Yongxuan, and she really failed to live up to the expectations of these 5 loyal lickers. After sending Su Fan away, when Wu Ji looked at Su Tong again, his expression was no longer as angry as before, but his face was still unkind, but when his son Wu Zhe came forward with a bag full of barbarian ears to report the results of the battle, Wu Ji showed joy after all. For a while, the anger towards Su Tong was not so bad. After all, they won, not only a great victory on the battlefield, but also the Su family won military honors and killed the enemy coach, which was their first achievement. His son could also get a lot of military exploits, and no one dared to say that Wu Ji was seeking favoritism. And in this battle, the victory was huge, and the other soldiers gained a lot of blood, which was enough to make a triumphant victory. After fighting for his whole life, he finally came to a successful conclusion. When Wu Ji thought about it, he seemed to have nothing to complain about. After all, we really have to settle accounts. It seems that these credits should belong to Marquis Shenwu. After all, it was him who took Su Fan away, who was the one who used the bait, who defeated the pursuers, and who finally ordered the raid on Xiaoqi, but Su Tong shared all the credit with others and didn't get any of it himself. The only credit he got was for capturing Xiaolishan's Kestrel Eagle King. Thinking of this, Wu Ji, let alone complaining, could only show Su Tong a concerned look on his face. "Thank you for your hard work, Marquis Shenwu." "Commander, you're welcome." The commander holds the world in his hands and is making plans. This battle is won thanks to the commander's strength and force. Su Tong flattered him with a smile. "Hey, Marquis Shenwu is joking. If Marquis Shenwu wasn't so brave and invincible, how could this battle be so simple?" After the two exchanged business information, Su Tong was arranged to go down to rest. Next came the tedious tasks of cleaning the battlefield, resting the army, recording the list of the dead, tallying the merits of the soldiers and generals, and so on. Su Tong was so happy that he moved into Uncle Guo's tent unceremoniously, saying that he wanted to take care of Uncle Guo personally so that he could heal his injuries. The guards around Uncle Guo were so angry that they dared not speak out. After all, facing Su Tong's smiling face, they would also feel the suffocating sense of oppression. As for the Kestrel Eagle King, Su Tong did not treat him badly. He tied the dragon talisman with 5 flowers and threw it in an iron cage. The iron cage was placed in Su Fan's tent and placed under Su Tong's nose. Prevent something unexpected from happening. Gradually, several guards also realized that something was wrong. Gao Zhou, Gu Zibai, and Li Bo also began to live in the tent. Ji Zhou and others led troops to surround the tent, but instead the Su family, the guards, were squeezed out of the tent. This was simply an open robbery by Chi Kuokuo, but they couldn't bear the thought that they had suffered a huge loss at the hands of Gu Zibai and Gao Zhou, so they could only watch helplessly. In addition to secretly cursing Su Tong and others for being shameless and robbers, he didn't even dare to fart. Comfortable. Su Tong lay on the large soft couch, took out the hookah pipe and started enjoying it leisurely, not caring whether his second-hand smoke would have any impact on Su Fan. Gao Zhou sat on a soft animal skin chair, with a large iron pot in front of him. From time to time, sparks burst from the charcoal fire below, and green smoke drifted out along the skylight above the tent. This time, a lot of precious ingredients brought by Su Fan were added to the pot. Spices were added to enhance the freshness, mixed with mutton, and cooked into a pot of meat soup. Gao Zhou stirred gently, and the aroma of meat mixed with the fragrance of dragon rice had already begun. The appetite of Ji Zhou and others outside the tent was greatly increased. "Boss, we have been going around in such a long circle. In the end, we will end up like the last round of players, being chased by masters of various sections. Even if we return to Linen, we can't think of stopping. The Su family will also. It won't make things easier for us." While Gao Zhou stirred the soup in the pot, he compared it with the script in his hand and analyzed it. Su Tong waved his hand. "It's different." Although he was still labeled as an innate divine fetus by Zhang Yishan, he had completely changed their origins. The 3 words Shenwu Hao were enough to make most sects in the world fear him. What's more, his strength is far superior to that of the players in the previous round. His record along the way is enough to intimidate the crowd. More importantly, this battle changed the direction of the script. In the original script, Wu Ji and Xiao Qi forced a delay until winter and retreated from each other. But after this time, there was constant friction between Tianqian and Bowman, and in the coming year they launched wars from all directions. In the last round, players were forced to join the army and fought in embarrassment, surrounded by dangers. The Su family was secretly stirring things up from behind, and they were almost destroyed. Group. But now, Tiangan has won a great victory, killing tens of thousands of northern barbarian troops, and even Xiao Qi is dead. The next life of northern barbarians will not be easy, and the direction of the script has been completely skewed by him. Su Tong didn't know exactly how it would develop, but one thing was that if Su Lai wanted to deal with them again, it might not be that easy. Su Tong's analysis was like a reassurance, allowing Gao Zhou and others to settle down. Su Tong stretched out his hand to take the meat soup from Gao Zhou, and after taking a delicious bite, he raised his eyebrows and couldn't help but wonder what happened to Chang Wogu over there. At this moment, in Pinjao Mansion, which is 100 miles away, the defeated northern barbarian army has retreated into the city. Pinjao Mansion was originally the territory of the Xian kingdom. When the northern barbarians annexed it, many of the people there fled, making the place look particularly depressed. Nowadays, I can't even find a decent doctor. Yeliki's painful moans could be heard from time to time in the room. At this moment, Yeliki had a high fever and his face was getting uglier. Although Dizhou was an earth immortal, he had no medical skills after all. He could only use a large amount of vitality every day to stabilize Yeliki's injuries. But seeing Yeliki's injuries getting worse and worse, Dizhou was as anxious as an ant on a hot pot. National Master, we can't delay any longer. The wound has already festered. Excision at this moment can still preserve the root of the dragon. If we delay it any longer, we may end up uprooting it. The person who spoke was an eunuch. Although he was an eunuch, he carried Yeliki on his back all the way. He won the trust of Yeliki and Dizhou, and Yeliki's injury could not be spread outside, so Dizhou could find someone to discuss it with. He is the only one. But it's hard to control things like this. If something happens to you. Dizhou frowned. He had naturally seen that wound before. The wound was so sensitive that he did not dare to touch it. It's not difficult. Although my family has never studied medicine, I helped my family with the art of mortifying the animals before entering the palace. The folks in the village even gave me a nickname. Oh, I haven't asked you about my father-in-law's nickname yet. Dizhou didn't expect that this eunuch actually knew this craft. He couldn't help but look at him with admiration and couldn't help but ask more questions. The eunuch pinched the flower with his hand and covered his mouth with a smile. Haha, it's not a good title. They only call me, egg opening expert. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 972. After a few days, the news of Tiangan's great victory had spread throughout the world. Of course, it goes without saying that the whole country cheered and the people celebrated. The emperor even granted amnesty to the whole world, exempting the people from taxes for 3 years to rest and recuperate. The cleaning work at the foot of Langshan Mountain was similar. A large number of northern barbarian corpses were piled up into a hill and burned in a fire. So much so that the burning smell can be smelled from more than 10 miles away, and when the wind blows, gray ashes are scattered like goose feathers and heavy snow. Chang Wuhen and Li Bo complained wildly, saying that they had no environmental awareness at all. At this time, Gao Zhou opened the tent and said obscenities. I will give you some advice. Who should I guard against? Your father. Originally, he proposed to bury some of the corpses on the spot. With so many corpses, bury them in the ground, cover them with soil, sprinkle some water, and count 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and a brand new mass grave will be created. This is a refinement. A treasure trove of corpses. As a result, he was suddenly told that the military law ordered that all enemy corpses could only be burned, and friendly corpses should be buried 3 feet apart, in groups of 3, to prevent the corpses from being infected by evil spirits. Isn't this just like pointing at Gao Zhou's nose and saying, "I'm just guarding you"? Not only Gao Zhou was worried, Su Tong was also worried. I originally wanted to go out at night and use the mountain clasp to capture some of the undead souls who died in the battle to replenish my yin soldiers, and then slowly upgrade them to increase the number of nightmare cavalry. As a result, when I went out and saw, my dear, they had built a mountain temple not far from where the corpse was burned. The mountain god's land is responsible for accepting ghosts, and these tens of thousands of ghosts were directly taken away by the mountain god. I was helpless and found myself lonely, with a depressed look on my face. Cough, 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 cough. There was a soft cough from behind the soft body, and then a hoarse laughter was heard. "Hey, you want the ghost body, what's the problem?" Su Fan opened his eyes. His complexion was much better now than a few days ago. Su Tong cooked a large pot of meat soup every day. In addition to giving it to Ji Zhou and others, Su Tong also gave Su Fan a portion. This dragon rice nourishes the body the most and is the ration of the dragon clan in the sky. For people with extremely weak bones like Su Fan, it is better than ginseng and Ganoderma lucidum. Just when Gao Zhou was cursing, Su Fan had already woken up. "Oh, please give me some advice." Su Tong narrowed his eyelids and looked at Su Fan. He placed a hand on Su Fan's pulse and injected part of the pure yang qi into Su Fan's body. Although this Uncle Guo had some difficulty dealing with him, he really couldn't let him die. Not only could he not let him die, Su Tong also wanted to win over him as much as possible. At least before they officially fell out with the Su family, the uncle-in-law played a big role. Su Fan lay on the soft couch, closed his eyes, and whispered, "There is a heavenly prison outside Linen City. They are all extremely vicious masters. They are hundreds of times stronger than these ghosts who died in battle. If you need it, you can go in and get it, but don't blame me for not reminding you. There was a lot of resentment in the prison that day, and my father would personally go to the prison every year to use his aura to suppress the resentment in the prison." Hiss. When Su Fan said this, Su Tong immediately slapped his forehead. Good guy, why did he forget about a place like Tianlao? I remember that when I and Zhang Haisheng were working on the same script, Lu Ji was lurking in Tianlao and almost released all the resentful souls in Tianlao and caused a catastrophe. This Tianlao is an excellent feng shui treasure land. Hey, thank you Uncle Guo for reminding me. Su Tong looked back and found that the uncle had fallen asleep again. Seeing this, Gu Zibai and the other 3 also went out to stretch their muscles. After all, although the tent was comfortable, they felt bored after lying in it for a long time. When Su Tong saw Su Fan sleeping soundly, his heart suddenly moved and he called out the props book and looked at the prop card Dream Walk in the props book, from chapter 1 of volume 14. Dream Walk. Dip passive skill 1, full of energy. The holder of the prop card is always in a full mental state. Passive skill 2, can't dream at night. Item card holders will no longer be able to dream. Active skill 3, Nightmare Walker. It consumes 3000 script points. After activation, you can transform into a Nightmare Walker, able to enter other people's dreams at will and distort the other person's dreams to a certain extent. Duration, 4 hours. Note, don't try too hard, you can have everything in your dreams. This prop card is the reward given to you after the last settlement of the scenario world. He didn't clean up this prop, just to keep it fresh. Seeing that the uncle fell asleep again, Su Tong became a little curious, and with a thought, he tried to activate the active skill, Nightmare Walker. With the activation of the skill, Su Tong's thoughts began to slowly come out of his body, as if his soul was separated from his body, but there were subtle differences. When he looked at it, he saw a slight smile on Su Fan's forehead. After Su Tong tried to touch the rising white light, his consciousness was immediately sucked into Su Fan's dream. Suddenly, with a ray of white light, the picture in front of him gradually became clear. Whether it is a person or an animal, when sleeping, the mental defense is at its weakest and most vulnerable to attack. The so-called monsters, ghosts, and even gods will choose this time to easily enter people's consciousness. Therefore, in many myths and legends, there are often stories of gods entering dreams to impart dharma, and demons entering dreams to harm people. Moreover, during sleep, the door to people's subconscious will be opened, and some of the most profound memory fragments will emerge, allowing monsters and ghosts to peek. Now that Su Tong has transformed into a nightmare walker, he has the ability to travel through dreams, and he can directly see the most profound memories in Su Fan's mind. What was unexpected was that Su Tong thought that Su Fan, the uncle of the country, must have lived a carefree life since he was a child, at least not worse than Ma Hongwen. What came into view was a small, cold room. A thin quilt with 2 holes in it, the cotton inside is negligible. A child who looked to be no more than 7 or 8 years old wrapped himself tightly in a quilt, but he still couldn't help shivering. Looking at that pale little face, one couldn't help but feel distressed. Is this the memory of Su Fan's childhood? Su Tong stood beside the bed, feeling very surprised. From the daily necessities in Su Fan's tent, we can see how exaggerated this guy's daily necessities are. His luxury of wanting to wipe his butt with gold is completely inconsistent with everything in his dream. Just when Su Tong was wondering, there was a rush of footsteps outside the door, and several women in grey clothes pushed the door open. The next moment, they roughly pulled Su Fan up on the bed. It was already the coldest month of winter, and the cold towels were all wet. He wiped it on Su Fan's face without wringing it out, and then pushed Su Fan out of the door with urging and impatience. Su Tong followed closely, and when he walked out of the room, he realized that the room Su Fan lived in was so shabby, it was clearly like a small woodshed. Compared with the rich and gorgeous decoration of other rooms, it is a completely different world. Su Fan was forcibly dragged to the front hall, where he saw that breakfast had been prepared on the table in the front hall. Set against the exquisite tableware, the breakfast even shone with a hazy golden light. Su Tong wanted to get closer and take a look, but found that it was blurry and he couldn't see anything clearly. Looking back, I found that Su Fan had not come in, but was standing outside the door in a far corner, waiting like the servants. At this time, a woman in gorgeous clothes sat down with the support of a group of maids with her big belly. Under the woman's delicate appearance, there was a majesty that people dared not look at directly. The woman turned a blind eye to the delicious food on the table and just picked up the bowl of chicken soup and drank it. Suddenly the woman raised her head, and her delicate face gradually turned into the face of a venomous snake, and then it turned into a huge venomous snake and came towards him, opening its bloody mouth, trying to devour him. Immediately after, the screen went dark, and a ray of cool firelight illuminated Su Fan's thin face, but at this moment, there were a few more wounds and bruises on his already thin face. In front of him was a pot of simmering chicken soup. Looking at the aroma permeating the pot, Su Fan's pupils were still struggling, and finally he stretched out his palm tremblingly and put a packet of poison into the soup pot. He's poisoning. Su Tong stood behind Su Fan and looked at the reflection reflected in the soup pot. It was the scene of the woman who drank the chicken soup and fell to the ground and died. But at this time, a big hand reached out from the darkness, grabbed Su Fan, and suddenly raised it high in the air. Su Tong followed the changes in the dream and looked behind him. His heart suddenly trembled. A man as tall as a mountain stood in front of him. The man's face was covered by shadows and his expression could not be seen clearly, but anyone could feel the man. With an angry aura, Su Fan was lifted above his head by the man with one hand, and he would be smashed into a pulp in the next second. But the strange thing is that Su Fan is smiling. His laughter was harsh, in stark contrast to the man's anger. Under Su Fan's laughter, the man finally placed him gently on the ground. At this time, an ironic scene appeared. The servants who had been cold-faced towards Su Fan rushed forward one after another and brought the most gorgeous clothes and the most delicious food to Su Fan. His residence transformed into it is as spacious and bright as a royal palace. He won and he was the only heir. Even if he commits a heinous crime, it cannot change the fact. But Su Fan was not happy. The figure of that man stood behind him all the time. This man held a bright broadsword in his hand, and more female relatives appeared around him. The number of female relatives is increasing, and the knife in the man's hand is getting closer and closer. For Su Fan, every moment is a kind of torture. He was afraid that if one of the women had a bulging belly, the next moment would be the day when he would die without a burial place. Seeing Su Fan in a quagmire in torment, Su Tong frowned slightly, and a bold idea arose in his heart. He suddenly stretched out his palm, and the warm pure sunlight in his palm tore apart the darkness in front of him and illuminated it. On Su Fan's body. Su Fan was stunned, feeling a long-lost sense of relaxation under the sunshine, as if all the pressure in his body had disappeared in an instant. When he raised his head and looked into the warm light, he saw Su Tong's broad shoulders. The figure is slowly extending its palm towards him. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 973. Boom. A clear sound made Su Fan wake up from his sleep. Shaking his head, he found that he was lying in his carriage. So he doubtfully picked up the copper stick at hand and knocked on the carriage. He saw the curtain in front of him opened, and his own guard poked his head out from the shaft of the carriage and said with surprise on his face, "Your Majesty, you are awake." For some reason, Su Fan suddenly felt an indescribable feeling in his heart when he saw his bodyguard, well, disappointment. "Your Majesty, you are finally awake. I thought that Yang was just talking nonsense." Hearing the guard's words, Su Fan frowned. "What nonsense are you talking about?" "Oh, he said that he has helped you recuperate your body recently, allowing you to have a peaceful sleep. You will wake up naturally after sleeping for 2 days. I didn't expect that you would sleep for 3 days." "I slept for 3 days." Su Fan was a little surprised. Even when he fell into a coma, he woke up from nightmares intermittently. He had never been able to sleep for such a long time. Not to mention, when he woke up this time, Su Fan really felt that his mental state was better than before. Much better. This reminded Su Fan of the dream he had. Thinking of Su Tong's figure standing in the sun in his dream, Su Fan felt very relaxed and was in a trance for a moment, until the guard took out a gold silk bag and placed it in front of Su Fan. The bag was opened and it was white inside. Rice cakes. This is what the man surnamed Yang left behind. He said that every time you eat it, break off a little bit at a time, add more water, and stir it into porridge. It can cure your deficiency and cold syndrome. But don't eat too much, for fear of you can't bear it physically. Snort. Su Fan curled his lips with disdain on his face. He had never tasted any of the heavenly and earthly treasures, but his illness never got better. But looking at the gold silk bag, it looks exquisite, so I might as well keep it. Where are Yang Hong and the others? Su Fan asked as he opened the curtains and looked out, only to find that they had not followed the army to evacuate. Your Majesty, we can move faster than them. I'm afraid we will have to wait until winter for them to return to Linen. After all, tens of thousands of troops, plus the corvée accompanying the army, amounted to nearly 100,000 horses. It was impossible for all of these soldiers and horses to be brought back to Linen. They had to detour to station the army in Suzhou and wait for the emperor to issue a reward before they could be resettled. At this time, Yang Hong and other talents able to enter Beijing according to the order. This toss-up can only take 2 or 3 months. They themselves are not part of the army, so they don't need to follow the army and can just go back to Linen. Like this. Although he knew that the rules were like this, Su Fan always felt uncomfortable. He closed his eyes and lay on the soft couch again, and stopped talking. On the other side, Su Tong and others were following the team along the official road. The migration of nearly 100,000 people was obviously not an easy task. Fortunately, Tiangan's military discipline was strict and there were no problems on the road. "General, I heard that Hangzhou is very picturesque, but we haven't seen it yet." Ge Zhou and others followed Su Tong closely on the road, talking and laughing without feeling tired at all. After all, this battle was a great victory, and they returned in triumph. Based on military merit, everyone could be promoted, but Ge Zhou and the others were more willing to stay by Su Tong's side, even as personal guards. Not only are they loyal to Su Tong, but also because they are constantly eating delicious food every day around Su Tong. They have a bowl of dragon rice porridge every day. Now they have broken through the 5 tiger skills to the 4th level, and their physique has far exceeded it is several times stronger than ordinary soldiers, and the centurion he served as is no problem. Hey, by the time we get there, it will be almost winter, and we won't be able to see any scenery. After Su Tong finished speaking, he looked back at the kestrel eagle escorted in the prison car. This eagle had been like an eggplant beaten by frost recently, with its head under its wings and lying there motionless. Neither eating nor drinking, it feels like an old hen nesting in a nest. But if anyone really thinks that this guy has no strength, then it is unlucky. Last night, a soldier tried to pluck this guy's feathers, but the result was that early the next morning, the guy was standing outside the prison car with only a pair of shoes. Su Tong knew in his heart that this beast was very arrogant, and it would not be a matter of time to surrender. Fortunately, he had plenty of time, so he could slowly endure it, and there were many ways to conquer him. "General." At this time, a messenger rushed over and said to Su Tong, "General, the commander-in-chief invites you to come over." "Good." Su Tong nodded and signaled Ge Zhou and others to be careful. After taking a good look at the kestrel eagle king in the prison car, he turned around and ran towards Wu Ji and others behind him. Seeing Su Tong coming, the faces of the generals beside Wu Ji showed flattering smiles. How can we not please them? If it weren't for Su Tong, how could they have the opportunity to make military exploits? I'm afraid they would still have to guard the camp at the foot of Langshan Mountain. The commander called me. Wu Ji nodded, took out a list of names from his chest and handed it to Su Tong. "This is a memorial to ask for merit. Marquis Shinwu can see if there is anything wrong." Ordinarily, it is not Su Tong's turn to see this kind of thing, but who made Su Tong's contribution this time be too great, but he also divided the credit himself. Due to emotions and reasons, Wu Ji should do it even if he was just pretending. After Su Tong took it and glanced at it, he couldn't help but secretly sigh that ginger is still spicy when he is old. In this memorial asking for merit, the first person to take credit was Su Fan, who came to express condolences to the army. This makes sense. After all, it is undisputed that the general who kills the enemy deserves the most credit. Wu Ji then listed out the list of military achievements. Many of them were young generals who went out with Su Tong, and some were generals who were in charge of the camp, as well as several soldiers with outstanding performance. Among them, Li Bo's name was impressively ranked at the top, only 2 or 3 places below him. But Wu Ji's own name was not among them, and most of the credit was shared. This was extraordinary. Usually Wu Ji was greedy for credit, and even a soldier like Yang Hong knew it. Being so generous now is partly because he wants to retire, and partly because he wants to leave a good reputation for his son. After all, he is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and no matter how much the emperor rewards him, he will not lose his share. After Su Tong confirmed that there was no problem, he returned the memorial to Wu Ji. The commander-in-chief has arranged everything properly. I don't think there is any problem. After receiving Su Tong's confirmation, Wu Ji felt relieved and pulled up the reins. Marquis Xinwu is good at equestrian skills. Let's go forward and see. After saying that, he kicked the reins and rode the horse towards the side road. Seeing this, Su Tong knew that Wu Ji had something to say, so he followed him. Seeing this, several other generals followed him slowly and wisely. Go 100 paces away. After the two of them had gone far away, Wu Ji looked around and then asked Su Tong, "What are Marquis Xinwu's plans for the future?" "I have no plans, just take it one step at a time," Su Tong said absently. Wu Ji disapproved of this answer and sneered, "I think Lord Xinwu will be riding a tiger and be unable to dismount." Su Tong frowned and looked sideways at Wu Ji, who said bluntly, "This time Xinwu Hao fights to become a prince. It is the time when the spring breeze is triumphant and the horse's hoof is broken. Now in the world rankings, Xinwu Hao has the highest martial arts crown and his star is hanging high. But the court is not as good as the rivers and lakes, and it is extremely dangerous. If one step is wrong, every step is wrong, forgive me. Even an earth immortal cannot escape the fate of being shattered into pieces." What Wu Ji said was serious, but he was by no means alarmist. The Emperor of Daqian is only 30 years old now, but he has been in charge for more than 10 years, but the power of the country is in the hands of the Su family. The Emperor conferred the title of Marquis of Xinwu on Su Tong, which sounded like a good name, but it was also a kind of coaxing. He hoped that people like Su Tong could keep pace with Su Lai. In the future, Su Tong entered Linen City, with the Emperor on one side and Su Lai in charge of the military on the other. No matter which side you take, there will be no good results. When Su Tong saw Wu Ji talking about this, he knew that the old guy was deliberately reminding him, and his expression immediately straightened. "I wonder if the commander has any good ideas." Wu Ji pinched his beard and said instead of answering, "We have won a great victory this time and the northern barbarians have been defeated. Your Majesty will definitely raise weapons next year and take the opportunity to expand the territory. Naturally, Su Qiaozu cannot go there in person. At that time, he will still have to rely on Marquis Xinwu to take charge. Zhang Jun, please ask Marquis Xinwu to take care of my useless son." Wu Ji's meaning was already very clear. Su Tong nodded understandingly, "Don't worry, Commander. I really like Ling Young Master's natural talent. He will be my right-hand man in future battles." When a wise man talks, he stops talking at this point. The deal between the two had been reached, and when they were returning to the army, Su Tong suddenly noticed something. His face suddenly turned bitter, and he thought to himself, "Why is this bald donkey still haunting him?" Thinking of this, he asked Wu Ji for a leave, immediately left the team and headed east. While the horse was galloping all the way, within a moment of burning incense, I saw Master Gozang and Master Minghai who were chanting sutras and meditating under a tea shed. Seeing this, Su Tong could only jump off the horse, throw a piece of silver to the clerk, and let him serve a pot of good tea. Then he sat carelessly in front of the ancient Tibetan monk. "Master, if you don't return to the East China Sea, why do you come to me again?" Before Guzang could speak, Su Tong spoke first. "Let's talk first. If you have something to say, just say it. Don't be a circle. I'm in a bad mood today and don't want to argue with you." Seeing that Su Tong opened his mouth first and blocked Guzang's mouth, Master Minghai laughed instead. "Your Majesty, there is no need to worry. The two of us are here to deliver treasures to your Majesty." Giving treasure. Su Tong couldn't help but narrowed his eyelids when he heard this, and immediately smelled a trick. Master Minghai smiled and took out something wrapped in red cloth from the bag on his waist. When he opened the red cloth, no one in the tea house could move their eyes away. A crystal clear glazed pagoda suddenly appeared in front of everyone. What is even more eye-catching is that there is a Buddha relic in the pagoda, which shines golden and moving in the sun. Su Tong saw that it was really a treasure and looked at Master Ming Hai curiously. You really want to give this to me? But make a good relationship with His Holiness. After Master Ming Hai finished speaking, Su Tong was about to extend his hand, but Master Ming Hai blocked his hand in front of Su Tong, smiled and stretched out 5 fingers, 50,000 taels of gold. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 974. There is a saying in Buddhism that when monks talk about money, they don't talk about yuan, but talk about fate. Don't ask, just ask, and you will get 18,000 fate. Su Tong always thought this was a joke. But I never thought that one day this joke would land on my head. 50,000 taels of gold, how much is this? In this era, silver was a rare commodity. Silver from Japan and overseas had not yet flowed into China. 1 tael of silver placed here would be enough to feed a family of 4 for 2 months, which is equivalent to about 4,000 minus 5,000 RMB. This is true for silver, let alone gold. 50,000 taels of gold. I had never been so arrogant when I was Ma Hongguan. For a moment, Su Tong tilted his head and looked at Master Ming Hai in front of him. I have money, can I burn it for you? Su Tong's words were obviously thorny. After all, being tricked like this would make anyone feel unhappy. Your Majesty, be careful what you say. Gozang looked unhappy. But what Master Ming Hai said next surprised both Su Tong and Guzang. Master Ming Hai clasped his hands together and shouted, but, then the smile on his face grew stronger. If that's the case, I would be very grateful to the poor monk. Please ask the Venerable Master to come to my Yunjing mountain in August next year and burn it to the poor monk on the spot. The corner of Su Tong's mouth twitched, wondering what kind of trick this bald donkey was up to. Guzang, who was on the side, heard what he was saying, and his expression suddenly changed. He looked at Master Ming Hai beside him with wide eyes, and said in surprise, Senior brother, you. But, this poor monk's luck is about to end. He will be enthroned in August next year. He is suffering from the lack of financial support on his journey. I didn't expect that he will form many good relationships here. It's good, it's good. Gozang's expression suddenly became complicated. Su Tong frowned, I won't go to Yunjing mountain, but if you really need it, the money will be enough for you on the road. As he said this, he took out a stack of money from the prop book and placed it on the table. At this time, Master Ming Hai no longer cared about the details. He directly put the money into his pocket, clasped his hands together, and bowed to Su Tong. The Venerable has great merits. After the young monk returned, he paid homage to Su Tong in the temple. The Venerable One set up a golden body to repay the Venerable One for his great kindness. No, 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 I'm still young, I haven't given birth to a child yet, don't leave me on the table, I feel weird. Su Tong hurriedly waved his hand and put away the glazed pagoda. I'll take the treasure. We're clear of both people and goods. We won't get entangled. I asked for leave and it's not convenient for me to stay here for a long time. Our mountains will remain green and our rivers will grow forever. Lu, say goodbye. After Su Tong finished speaking, he didn't even have a chance to be polite to the two of them, got on his horse and drove away quickly. The bald donkey in Gozang didn't give in to him at all, but the monk Ming Hai had too many tricks. Although he had no shortage of money, he always felt that something was wrong in his heart. It was better to use the 36 strategies as the best strategy. Senior brother. This, you let him take your glass stupa and leave. Guzang originally brought his senior brother here to ask him to help him regain his position. Unexpectedly, instead of arguing with him, his senior brother gave him the most precious glazed relic pagoda of Yunjing mountain, which immediately made Guzang feel that he had lost something. The lady lost her troops again. But the master Ming Hai on the side had a smile on his face. Facing his junior brother's depressed look, he just smiled faintly. Buddhism is like a seed, the more you sow, the more you will reap unknowingly. When you look back, you are already a sea of Buddha. Guzang was confused when he heard this. Seeing this, monk Ming Hai didn't want to say anything anymore, but it was obvious that his junior brother was still stubborn, so he could only ask, "Do you know what the real value of the glazed relic pagoda is?" "Of course I know that this treasure is blessed by the relics of Sakyamuni Buddha. Those who hold it can practice the Nirvana Sutra." Guzang certainly knows the mystery of this thing. This thing is the most precious treasure of Buddhism. The Nirvana Sutra can even have the ability to see into the future. If you practice it to great success, you can control time with a snap of your fingers. Monk Ming Hai smiled and nodded, and continued to ask, "At what level of cultivation can you control time?" "Hey, senior brother, aren't you testing me? There are 7 levels in the Nirvana Sutra. If you practice to the 5th level, you will have the ability to control time. Only when you practice to the 7th level, you will be perfect." Guzang answered fluently, and obviously would not be stumped by this little common sense. Monk Ming Hai was very satisfied with the answer. He took out a string of rosary beads from his sleeve and placed it on his hand. Each of these levels has a level of Buddhist teachings. When the Venerable Master reaches the 7th level, he will be a future Buddha with boundless merits. Since he is a future Buddha, I will give him the most precious treasure of Buddhism and help him become a Buddha. I will be the present Buddha. Junior brother, you are the only one. How can we attain enlightenment if we still stick to the past Buddhas?" Guzang was completely stunned at this time and didn't know how to refute his senior brother's words. Master Ming Hai saw that his junior brother had nothing to say, so he patted him on the shoulder meaningfully. "Junior brother, when you save others, you first save yourself. This is true for people, and so is the Buddha." Only when Master Ming Hai walked out of the tea shed did Guzang figure it out and asked his senior brother to come out, not to teach Yang Hong a lesson but to enlighten him. On the other side, Su Tong rode back, feeling unmotivated. He called out the props book and carefully examined the so-called treasure. "I saw the Buddha's light flowing on this prop card, which was densely packed with text. Among them was a golden Buddha statue, sitting in the void, with countless sun, moon, and stars rotating around it. Just by looking at the appearance of the prop card, one knew that it was a rare high-end prop card, but when Su Tong looked at its entry with anticipation, he was immediately dumbfounded. Glass relic pagoda. It is said that there is a finger bone relic of the Buddha hidden there, which has been blessed by the power of eminent monks of all ages. The holder can practice Buddhist magical powers and the Nirvana Sutra. Passive Skill 1, Nirvana Scripture. Holders can comprehend the Nirvana Sutra. Note, the Nirvana Sutra is the supreme practice method of Buddhism. It has the magical effect of penetrating the power of time. There are 7 levels in total. The higher the practice, the stronger the control of time. Gone? Gone now. Liar. Did you lie to me? Su Tong looked at the entries in the props book and instantly felt like he had been tricked by a bald donkey. Isn't this a high-end item card? He didn't even have an active skill, so he gave himself a sutra book and cheated him out of more than 10 ghost notes? Sure enough, monks who know how to chant sutras can't believe it. This routine is too profound. Su Tong was speechless for a while. What Nirvana scripture? After working on it for a long time, he still had to study it by himself? In an instant, Su Tong had the urge to throw this thing into the pit, but he thought that it was something he had exchanged for more than 10 pieces of ghost money. Even if it didn't work, it would be good to keep it at home as a decoration. After patiently studying it for a moment, Su Tong noticed that the Nirvana Sutra seemed to have the power to control time. This actually made him think. There are only 2 time prop cards in his hand, Touch of Time and Time Traveler, but there is no doubt about the power of these 2 prop cards. Even without them, he would have died long ago. It was precisely because of his understanding of the power of time that Su Tong reluctantly endured and tried to understand the so-called Nirvana Sutra. As a thought arose in him, the appearance of the glazed stupa suddenly appeared in his mind. On the glittering glazed pagoda, there are countless small regular scripts. The handwriting is no more than the size of a grain of rice, but it is very clear, like the mark carved by a knife, without any ambiguity. As Su Tong's thoughts deepened, it felt like the small words engraved on the pagoda would move and fly, gradually forming a golden picture in front of Su Tong. In the scroll, there is a golden Buddha sitting in the void. This golden Buddha's eyes are slightly closed, his legs are crossed, and his hands are in a mudra. His expression is peaceful, but unlike the majesty of the Buddha statues in other temples, it reveals a kind and familiar feeling. Breath. In a daze, Su Tong discovered that the face of the golden Buddha was exactly the same as his own, as if the Buddha was none other than himself. Magic. Feeling the wonder of this scripture for the first time, Su Tong simply relaxed his mind and studied it carefully. Unknowingly, he was already on horseback, letting the old horse carry him back to the marching team. The surrounding soldiers looked up at Su Tong, only to see him with his eyes slightly lowered and a smile on his face. A feeling of closeness arose spontaneously. He was reciting scriptures in a soft voice that people could not understand. I feel extremely comfortable. In particular, Ge Zhou and others who followed Su Tong felt that the 5 tiger skills in his body began to practice unconsciously due to the sutras recited by Su Tong. Following them all the way, not only did they not feel tired, but they felt that their whole body was useful. The same endless strength. More than a month passed in a flash. Seeing the weather getting colder and colder, the soldiers finally arrived outside Hangzhou and began to station troops. Su Tong was separated into a separate camp. The 3,000 soldiers and horses led by Ge Zhou and others were all assigned to Su Tong by Wu Ji. From then on, these soldiers and horses became Su Tong's personal troops, and Su Tong could take them with him wherever he went in the future. It can be regarded as Wu Ji reciprocating the favor and giving Su Tong some compensation in advance. Su Tong asked Gu Zibai to be his general, responsible for training these troops. Gao Zhou did not stay in the camp. The soldiers practiced every day in the camp, and the blood was so strong that he felt uncomfortable all over. Su Tong simply gave him a special leave and asked him to find a place to refine the corpse by himself. As for Li Bo, this guy did not follow Su Tong. Instead, he was valued by Wu Ji and took him with him and promoted him to a personal guard. During this period, Su Tong tried to practice the Nirvana Sutra every day, and found that the Nirvana Sutra did have abilities beyond his expectations. As he practiced, his thoughts became purer, with fewer distracting thoughts, and his thinking became clearer. Coupled with his Kakiao exquisite heart, although his cultivation level remained unchanged for the time being, his strength has improved to another level. Even his pure Yang sword technique has faint signs of a breakthrough. What made him even more delighted was that after completing the first level of the Nirvana Sutra, he had a clearer understanding of time control. I saw Su Tong open his eyes and slowly raise his palms. The sunlight penetrated through the gaps between his fingers, as if there was an invisible and immaterial force in the mist, wasting his skin bit by bit. Is this the years? Su Tong took a deep breath and was about to continue meditating when Ge Zhou strode outside the camp. General, that beast suddenly went berserk and hurt people. After we suppressed it, it seemed to be dying and its breath became weaker and weaker. What Ge Zhou was talking about was the Kestrel Eagle King. This beast was very ferocious, and Su Tong deliberately endured it. As a result, it didn't eat or drink, and it didn't even have the slightest intention of bowing its head. Seeing this, Su Tong sighed and stood up from his knees. Take me to see. He has made up his mind that if he cannot surrender this time, he will simply kill him and make soup.